From a family of fishermen and farmers to the true immortal of water and virtue, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, The Fish Farmer. Qinggai Islands, the foundation of the Li family. The morning sun just jumped out of the clouds. It was still early, and many Li clan members had already rushed to their own fish ponds. A light boat broke through the mist on the water, agile, with fine golden light rippling in the waves. Li Quanqing sat on the boat, looking only 16 or 17 years old, with an upright figure and regular features. Even with simple clothes, he still couldn't hide his aura. He didn't see him paddling, but his magic power surged, and he could control the fishing boat to ride the wind and waves and move forward quickly. Hundreds of boats competed for the current, and the cool water vapor hit their faces, which refreshed the spirits of the clan members who got up early. Soon, a large area of lotus flowers came into view, pink and white, budding, and crystal dewdrops rolled down on the green lotus leaves. These lotus flowers were distributed regularly and staggered, cutting the water surface into fish ponds, and the swimming fish could be vaguely seen. "Brother King, you got up so early again." A fishing boat approached, with an old man with grey hair and beard sitting on it, wearing a straw raincoat and a hat, and a purple clay teapot on the stove gurgling with steam. "Has Uncle 19 had his meal?" He meditated all night last night, and was in high spirits, so he came a little early. Li Quanqing smiled and raised the dry food he brought to indicate. The old fisherman's name was Li Quanqing, who was exactly 2 generations older than him in the clan, and had the 5th level of key refining. Practice well, like that rascal in my family. His father should give him a good beating." The old man chattered, holding a jade-mouthed pipe magic instrument in his rough hands, knocking it on the boat's gong. Over the years, the copper and wood boat gongs were obviously dented and blackened by the flames. "Brother King, you have really changed a lot in the past year." Li Quanqing exhaled a puff of smoke, his old face like bark relaxed, and he said with a lot of emotion, "But it's normal to encounter a big change." Li Quanqing heard this, but smiled without saying anything. According to convention, he is a time traveler. Because his parents died in an accident, his original body was extremely sad and died, so he took over the nest. Crash. The water surged and hit the bow, splashing waves. Li Quanqing stopped the fishing boat, and a square fish pond appeared in front of him. The water surface was wide, nearly 20 acres, surrounded by a circle of lotus. Bingxi District, fish pond number 13. Li Quanqing took out the token and infused it with magic power. Suddenly, the array patterns on the surface of the lotus plants flickered, blooming with rosy clouds, showing an array covering the entire fish pond. These graceful lotus flowers are not just plants, but an existence like the base of the array. The array pattern covered the water area, which not only prevented the spiritual fish from escaping, but also had the effect of gathering spirits, locking all the spiritual energy within a radius of several miles into the 20-acre fish pond. A spiritual lotus blossomed and turned into a lotus platform the size of Millstone. Li Quanqing stepped on it with a token and slowly drove into the array. Crash. Undercurrent surged, and several huge green carps floated up and spit out water arrows from their mouths. Snap. Snap. These water arrows were as thick as a thumb. If they hit a mortal, they would at least fall into the lake and get soaked. But the lotus platform flashed, and the patterns on the petals suddenly condensed into a circle of light shield, blocking all these water arrows outside. "A bunch of stupid fish that can't be tamed, let them starve first." Li Quanqing shook his head, stretched out his hand, and pinched the seal, releasing a basic spell. Water control spell. The water condensed and turned into ropes to tie up the carps and threw them into the depths of the waves with a splash. This kind of big black carp is not really a spiritual creature. It is somewhere between an ordinary beast and a demon beast. But under the nourishment of spiritual energy, it is also very strong, and its flesh and blood are very nourishing. It is very delicious when stewed into fish soup. It is very popular among cultivators in the early stage of key refining. The lotus platform passed through the water, and you could see that the entire fish pond was divided into 2 parts, one large and one small, by the formation. The large fish pond raised more than 1,000 adult big black carps, while the small fish pond was for immature fry fish cubs, come out to eat. Li Quanqing looked at the small fish pond, raised his hand, and sprinkled a bunch of fish food, which floated on the water and sparkled. This special bait has a strong aroma, and you can see the fish scales surging, and the young fish scrambled to swim out of the water to grab food. Li Quanqing watched without blinking, and suddenly his eyes lit up, and he found his target. It was a half-foot long black carp, with bright scales and powerful fins. It beat the surrounding competitors, and monopolized the bait. The most important thing is that in Li Quanqing's eyes, there was a bright white ball of light on the forehead of the black carp. "It's you." He chuckled, and the water control technique condensed into a big hand, grabbing the young fish in midair. Even if the black carp is strong, it is naturally useless outside the lake. Li Quanqing stretched out his arm and easily touched the ball of light, which exploded into wisps of white light and sank into his body. Harvest an adult black carp and reward a spiritual energy ball. With a line of text flashing in front of his eyes, a large ball of pure spiritual energy appeared out of thin air in his meridians. Li Quanqing practiced the golden water art to refine this ball of spiritual energy into wisps of pure magic power and send it all into the Danshan. The feeling of the cultivation level rising is simply wonderful. This is the golden finger that Li Quanqing awakened after crossing. Every time he raises a beast to maturity and can reproduce offspring, he can get a light ball reward. One labor, double harvest. Since you have entered the mature stage, go sit at the adult's table. Li Quanqing flicked his wrist and threw the black fish into the big fish pond. It swam quickly and disappeared. He rolled his eyes and continued to look for the existence of the light ball among hundreds of young fish. Harvest an adult big black fish, reward a spiritual energy ball. Harvest an adult big black fish, reward a spiritual energy ball. Harvest an adult big black fish, reward a spiritual energy ball. 3 more spiritual energy balls entered his body, and Li Quanqing felt so comfortable that his bones were numb. This kind of pleasure of getting something for nothing without meditation is really too exciting. He felt that in less than a month, he would be able to break through the 3rd level of key refining. He can be called a genius among the younger generation of the Li family. Perhaps he had angered the public by catching fish frequently, and a black fish with particularly thick scales suddenly jumped out of the water and spit out crystal water arrows from its mouth. This kind of attack naturally could not break the defense of the lotus platform. But Li Quanqing was excited. This fish also had a ball of light on its head. "You dare to spit at me? Take it." A small spirit fish was naturally easy to control. Harvest an adult big black carp, reward water control experience. Looking at the text in front of him, Li Quanqing rubbed the fish head excitedly. This kind of experience reward had happened twice before, which directly improved his control of water control by a large margin. The white light sank into his mind, and a large piece of text emerged one after another, which was easily mastered by him. After digesting this experience, Li Quanqing no longer needed to pinch the formula. He lightly pointed and directly performed the water control technique, which was easy and freehand, and operated as he wished. The water flow was invisible, but it was very well behaved in his hands, and it easily condensed into all kinds of shapes. Water control technique. Great success. A big black carp transformed by the water flow rushed into the fish pond, lifelike, splashing a lot of waves like a real creature, rushing around, disturbing the fish school. The muddy water was turbulent, and all the young fish were forced to float up, staring with dead eyes, and spitting bubbles in dissatisfaction. Li Quanqing saw that there was indeed no new light ball, so he gave up the search, and prepared to feed the fish in the big fish pond. The Li family generation name, Changqing Chengzang, Qunai Quanjin, Yang'anjishi, Zhuduanqing. New author and new book. Please collect, read, and vote. Chapter 2 Spirit Fish. The lotus leaves swayed gently, and the lotus flowers bloomed. Li Quanqing stood on the water, and handfuls of bait were scattered in the fish pond with the wind. Thousands of fish scrambled for food, and for a while the water surface was full of bamboo greenbacks. The waves sparkled, which was very beautiful. Although there was the temptation of fish food, there were still more than a dozen stubborn adult big black carps, constantly spitting water arrows. Each of them spitted so happily, and there was a joyful look in the fish eyes. "It's really against the sky. I will sell you in 2 days and exchange you all for spiritual stones. This kind of big black carp is not worth money. One fish is only worth 1 spiritual sand. 100 spiritual sands can only be exchanged for 1 low-grade spiritual stone. The real signboard of the Li family is actually a monster called Gengjin carp. Moo. Moo. The dull call sounded, and the fish school suddenly fell into a commotion, as if they saw a superior. 2 Gengjin carps floated to the surface of the water leisurely, like stars holding the moon, and the fish scales were as beautiful as jade under the sunlight. They are not big, only about the length of a forearm, but their scales are full of demonic aura, full of spirituality. The difference between the green jade carp and the big black fish is like that between a cultivator and immortal. They look similar in appearance, but they are actually very different in nature. Li Quanqing couldn't help but smile when he saw the 2 spiritual fish and took out the specially prepared high-grade baits to feed them. The green jade carp is very valuable, and the fish meat contains rich spiritual energy, which is more delicious than spiritual rice. Fish blood can be used to make spiritual ink, and fish bones and tendons can be used to make bone setting paste. The thin, hard, and good manner conductivity of fish scales are natural materials for refining magic tools. A green jade carp in the early stage of key refining can be sold at a high price of 3 to 10 spiritual stones. These 2 green jade carps, 1 male and 1 female, are the benefits given by the family. Every member of the Li family, as long as he is over 15 years old, can get a pair of male and female fish fry for free. If you want it later, you need to spend spiritual stones or family contributions. After feeding the 2 young green jade carps, Li Quanqing carefully touched their scales. Optimistic and cheerful, jade carp, I feel beautiful again. When can I have a baby maturity? 98%. Fish simmering, jade carp, eat, and eat sleep and sleep good luck. I almost starved to death just now. Maturity. 94%. This is another function of Li Quanqing's golden finger. As long as you touch the spirit beast, you can see their mental state and maturity. As for why it is not used on the big black carp, it is naturally because there are too many of them. A group of worthless guys. Let them survive and grow wildly. Looking at the male jade carp swallowing high-grade spirit bait in big mouthfuls, Li Quanqing couldn't help but harden his fist. Eat, eat, eat. Just know how to eat. I see you eat so much every day. Why can't you get more mature? As an unruly demon, it is forbidden to simmer. If the spirit fish doesn't work hard, how can I save enough spirit stones to become a weapon refiner? Li Quanqing touched the beautiful female jade carp again, and suddenly felt much more pleasing to the eye. Not only does it grow fast, but it also considers its owner in every way. When fish eggs are really produced, there is no need to spend money to buy them from the family, which can save a lot of spiritual stones. More than an hour has passed since the feeding of the 20-acre fish pond was finished. Li Quanqing knows the importance of cultivation and does not waste any time. He began to practice with the help of the spiritual energy in the fish pond. Open the book. He sat cross-legged on the lotus platform, his eyes slightly closed, his 5 hearts facing the sky, and the strands of spiritual energy were refined into the body through his mouth and nose. The human race in this world is born with all 5 spiritual roots, but there are also differences in strength. Li Quanqing is a middle-grade spiritual root of water attribute, and a low-grade spiritual root of golden wood attributes. As for the 2 attributes of fire and earth, they are not up to standard, and the spirit test platform cannot detect them. If all 5 spiritual roots are not up to standard and there is no special physique, then it is a mortal who has no chance of immortality. Gold produces water, and Li Quanqing practices the Li family's basic practice Gold and Water Sutra. If he wants to build a foundation in the future, he will have to switch to a more advanced Taoist spiritual sutra. After the training, it was already noon. Half a day of training is only equivalent to 1/3 of a spiritual energy ball. Li Quanqing sighed slightly in his heart and took out the dry food he had prepared long ago to solve lunch. With his qualifications, if he didn't cheat, it is estimated that the great perfection of key training is the limit. Quanqing, are you having a meal? Outside the fish pond, someone shouted his name across the formation, and the voice sounded quite familiar. Li Quanqing raised his eyes and looked. His heart suddenly sank, and he had a kind of ominous premonition. Why is this guy here? The person who came was a thin middle-aged man with a gloomy temperament. He stood at the bow with two big black fish in his hands. The corners of his eyes and eyebrows gave people a feeling of frustration. My nephew has grown up and doesn't recognize me as his uncle? Li Yuheng touched the solid and cold formation in front of him and forced a smile on his face. When he thought of the ancient cave house that had just been born, he suddenly felt anxious and wanted to drive the spiritual boat into it right now. Uncle, do you want to talk to me about something? Li Quanqing opened the formation and let him in. His expression was indifferent, and his smile was neither cold nor warm. Both of his original parents were members of the Li clan. His father was born in a mortal family, and later his spiritual roots were measured, and he embarked on the road to immortality. His mother was the real immortal vein of the Li clan. It was heard that her ancestors had also established a foundation, but they had long since fallen. The man in front of him was his uncle, who had rarely walked since he could remember. Li Yuheng went into the fish pond, rubbed his hands, and coughed. It's not that there has been a good harvest of fish recently. Your aunt asked me to send it to you, nephew, to taste. Looking at the lively big black carp, Li Quanqing sighed. Uncle, just say whatever you want to say. Li Yuheng looked slightly embarrassed and showed a shy smile. There is an immortal palace near the sea, and uncle wants to go and try it, but there are not enough spiritual stones. Exploring the treasures left by the predecessors is not an easy task. Magical instruments, spiritual armor, talismans, elixirs. Each of them requires a lot of spiritual stones. Anyone who is reluctant to give up spiritual stones would have died in the sea to feed the fish. Li Quanqing thought of many possibilities, but he didn't expect it to be the worst one. He looked at his uncle and felt the blood vessels in his temples throbbing. My parents died in the sea monsters, and the storage bag was lost. Where can I lend you spiritual stones? Li Yuheng laughed dryly. Don't we still have the family contribution points left by Yuru and others? If we use them as collateral, we can also exchange them for hundreds of spiritual stones. As if he felt that he was too shameless, he hurriedly explained, don't worry, nephew, I will use the title deed of my own fish pond in District B as collateral, and I will never let you suffer a loss. Fish pond in District B. Li Quanqing was immediately interested when he heard this. According to the concentration of spiritual energy, the Li family divided the thousands of miles of sea area of the Qinghai Islands into 8 circular areas, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and Xin. The first 4 areas are occupied by the Li clan members themselves, while the waters of the last 4 areas, including the islands therein, are rented out to those independent cultivators and small families. The fish ponds in Area B have abundant spiritual energy, enough to support the growth of the Jade Carp King in the middle and late stages of key refining, and can raise more spiritual fish and sea beasts. Li Quanqing's heart moved slightly. Bring me the deed to see it. Chapter 3 Title Deeds. Upon hearing this, Li Yuheng could not wait to take out an ancient land deed, which was shining with spiritual light, and was impervious to water and fire. In terms of material alone, it was not inferior to those immortal cultivation instruments. Is this the fish pond left by Grandpa? Li Quanqing touched the land deed and had his own guess in his mind. After all, their ancestors were rich and left some heritage. When Grandpa divided the family before his death, he left the best fish pond in Area B to his son. Li Quanqing's mother inherited this 20-acre fish pond in Area C. Well, it's that one. Li Yuheng nodded with a red face. His voice was very small, and he couldn't help but tighten the straw rope strung with the big black carp. His father had high hopes for him back then, hoping that his son could practice with peace of mind with the help of his ancestors. He never thought that he would have to beg people so humbly one day. But for the treasure in the cave, for himself to break through the 6th level of key refining or even stronger, he endured it. Li Quanqing thought for a while, and finally nodded gently in his uncle's expectant eyes. I'll do this deal. Fish ponds are precious, especially those waters with abundant spiritual energy. They were divided up as early as the beginning of the establishment of the clan. Very few people trade them. Very good. Let's go to the main island of Qinghai now. We must exchange the spiritual stones today. Li Yuheng was overjoyed and couldn't contain himself. He was extremely excited. Li Quanqing had no choice but to follow him to the core main island, Qinghai Island. As the base camp of the Li family, Qingyu Island is 500 miles wide. There is a precious spiritual vein of the second grade upper grade buried in the island. The 2 foundation building monks and those direct lineage members all live there. In addition, there are 7 quasi second grade branch islands guarding Qingyu Island, like a blooming lotus. Li Quanqing lives on Qingpan Island, one of the 7 spiritual islands. As soon as he stepped onto Qingyu Island, the rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed to his face, and he was so comfortable that all the pores on his body opened greedily. It makes people want to fly away. It is worthy of being a second level high quality spiritual island. Li Quanqing looked at the exquisite caves that were looming among the mountains, and a trace of deep envy flashed in his eyes. Li Yuheng was very impatient, and had no intention of strolling around. He took his nephew straight to the Changqing Palace, to handle various affairs of the clan. Under the witness of 2 elders of the clan, Li Quanqing successfully mortgaged the 500 family contribution points left by his parents for 500 spiritual stones. Looking at the storage bag that was glowing with spiritual light, Li Yuheng felt that his saliva was about to flow down. Unfortunately, the elders were beside him, and he didn't have the courage to stretch out his claws. Li Quanqing threw the heavy storage bag. "Uncle, where is my land deed?" Here. Li Yuheng quickly took it out and showed an extremely flattering smile. Li Quanqing suddenly retracted his hand. "Uncle, the family only gives us 3 months to repay the spirit stones. After that, we will charge interest. You will have to pay the interest, of course. Wait for uncle to make a fortune in the cave." Li Quanqing looked at the confident person and couldn't help but twitch his mouth and handed over the storage bag. The money and goods were settled, and the transaction was completed. After all this trouble, the sun was setting in the west, and the setting sun was like a scorching sun. Li Quanqing touched the deed, and from this moment on, this fish pond in Area B belonged to him temporarily. "Nephew, do you want to go to the ruins with your uncle?" Li Yuheng put the storage bag close to his body, and immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and his heart was at ease. "No. Going out for adventure is not as stable and safe as raising fish." Li Quanqing shook his head decisively, and he had no interest in this so-called ancient cave. No matter how great the opportunity is, can it be greater than his cheat? He just wanted to take good care of his own fish pond and practice peacefully until the end of time. The fishing boat broke through the fire clouds reflected on the water, and Li Quanqing set off on his return journey with satisfaction. The fishing songs of the tribesmen came from afar, and the waves roared, condensing into a white line behind the boat. He returned to his own fish pond again, preparing to feed the fish for the second time today. It's almost 2 hours later than usual. Aren't these stupid fish starving? Li Quanqing opened the formation and prepared to feed the young fish first as usual. The bait was scattered, and the fragrance was fragrant. Suddenly, a large wave exploded on the water surface, and a green jade carp jumped out. The carp was full of demonic energy, drawing an arc in the air, and jumped directly from the big fish pond into the small fish pond to grab food. The waves rolled like a vicious dragon pouncing on food. The big black carps couldn't grab it at all, and didn't bite a single bait. The young fish who dared to resist were all beaten extremely miserably by the green jade carp. Li Quanqing was also stunned for a moment. The green jade carp has always been docile and rarely behaves like this. He carefully identified it for a moment and suddenly found that it was the female spirit fish. Could it be that Li Quanqing had a certain guess in his mind and looked at it intently? He was immediately surprised to find that wisps of white light bloomed from the scales of the green jade carp, and it looked like a ball of light. This guy is about to enter the mature stage. Li Quanqing was immediately overjoyed and took out all the high-level baits without any hesitation. I wonder what rewards a real key refining stage monster will offer. Hungry fish pounces on food. Green jade carp. I'm so hungry, so hungry, so hungry. I feel like my body is going to burn. Maturity 99%. Li Quanqing sat on the lotus platform, touching the delicate green fish scales, and verified his guess. Moo. The low call caused ripples, and the male green jade carp also surfaced and floated over at the smell. It looked at the high-grade spiritual bait covering the water surface, and its dead fish eyes seemed to be burning with blazing flames. Seeing that the male king carp was about to snatch food from his wife, Li Quanqing pinched his fingers and directly controlled the water flow to fish it up. Want to eat? Let me see first. Sashimi king carp just woke up and there is delicious food. Dry food. Maturity 94%. Li Quanqing looked speechless. You are a salted fish who still wants to snatch food. Just eat some ordinary bait first. Unexpectedly, facing the ordinary bait that he usually despises, this guy actually accepted it. The male king carp mixed in the group of big black fish and ate very happily. It seemed that there was no difference between the two, and they were very thorough. Li Quanqing felt helpless and had to keep his eyes on the female king carp that was about to mature. When night fell, the stars were brilliant, and a bright moon quietly hung in the sky. The king carp finally stopped eating. It floated on the water without moving, its scales reflecting the cold moonlight, and it kept absorbing and exhaling spiritual energy from all directions, as if undergoing a deep transformation. Fish demon worships the moon. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the male green jade carp sneaked into the water and secretly swallowed the unfinished spiritual bait. While eating, it also turned its eyes to peek at the lotus platform, fearing that it would be discovered. Li Quanqing had no time to care about the other party, because at this moment, the female green jade carp officially transformed into a demon and entered the mature stage. The ball of light is completely formed. Li Quanqing waved his hands almost eagerly, his eyes eager. Fortunately, although it has become a spiritual fish in the early stage of key refining, the character of the green jade carp is still very obedient. It swings its large fins like clouds, like a water elf made of green jade, and comes gracefully. Boom. Harvest a green jade carp in the early stage of key refining, and reward a large spiritual energy ball. The moment his fingers touched the ball of light, Li Quanqing felt that his head was buzzing. The incomparably majestic spiritual energy poured into his body from the void, like a rushing river, stretching and aching his meridians. He involuntarily began to practice the golden water technique, moving his magic power through several great cycles, and then fiercely attacked the invisible bottleneck. Chapter 4 Breakthrough. The moonlight was hazy, like a layer of gauze covering the water surface. The tides rose and fell, and the sea breeze rolled up bursts of salty and fishy air. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged on the lotus platform with his eyes closed. His whole body was covered by the array pattern and the treasure was solemn. As the tides rose and fell, the magic power he cultivated seemed to resonate with it, and there were bursts of strange waves in his body. The light blue gaseous magic power with golden light ran through the meridians, like 100 rivers converging, and finally turned into a misty spiritual sea in the Danshan. Wisps of mist spread out from his mouth and nose like little snakes. They were the spiritual energy balls that had not been refined in time. The school of fish turned into thousands of scales, surging layer by layer, surrounding the lotus platform, competing for these pure spiritual mists, and the scene was spectacular. In the end, the two jade carps took the lion's share. Time passed bit by bit, and this breakthrough lasted a whole night. It was not until the sky was dim and the east was white that Li Quanqing's body trembled violently and slowly opened his eyes. Two beams of light shot out from his pupils, half a foot long, piercing the deepest darkness before dawn. A brilliant sun jumped out of the sea, and the red and golden light spread all over the Danglan Sea, shining warmly on people. Li Quanqing exhaled a breath of turbid air, and felt that his whole body from the soles of his feet to the top of his head was extremely transparent. As the magic power surged, there was an illusion that it was powerful enough to blow everything up. Be careful not to be arrogant. I'm only at the 3rd level of key refining. If you are too arrogant, you will be beaten. Li Quanqing stood up and stretched his stiff hands and feet, but he couldn't suppress his pouting. A 16-year-old at the 3rd level of key refining is considered a genius even in the direct line of the Li family. Splash. Dozens of big black fish jumped in the water, spitting out water arrows from their mouths, densely packed, and gusts of strong wind blew in his face. They had been hungry all night. Not only did they not get any food last night, but they were also beaten for no reason. They were all very angry. Humph. Today is a good day. I'll sell you all. Li Quanqing couldn't stand these arrogant guys any longer. He took out all the bait and started feeding them. For the last full meal, let you eat to your heart's content. Li Quanqing took out a few fish baskets from the boat. They looked inconspicuous, but they were actually space instruments specially used to store fish. It was considered one of the family's benefits. He used the water control technique to condense a fishing net the size of a house and scooped it into the water. Splash. The water poured down from the sky, the white waves rolled, and in the end, only the layers of abundant fish harvests were left in the net. This fish is big enough, and the water arrows it spits are big and fierce. It will definitely sell for a good price. This one looks familiar. It looks like the young fish that spit at me yesterday. Let's just release it. Wow. There is actually a female fish with such full ovaries. This is a treasure. It can be kept as breeding fish. It needs a separate room. In the end, in addition to the more than 60 breeding fish left, Li Quanqing harvested a total of 1078 plump big black carps, which can be called a bumper harvest. As for the Kingayu carp, they still need to mate, so they can't be sold for the time being. Humming a fisherman's song, Li Quanqing pushed his own fishing boat and rushed towards Kingayu Island. Seeing that the main island was already in sight, Li Quanqing suddenly turned the corner and headed straight for his uncle's fish pond. To be precise, it is now his fish pond. The waters of Area B are located between Kingayu Island and the 7 branch islands, forming a circle. In terms of spiritual energy concentration alone, it is not much worse than the second level spiritual vein. Yameo District, Fish Pond number 45. This fish pond is slightly smaller, about 16 acres, with a shiny surface, white mist, and green lotus leaves, like a fairyland. It looks quite extraordinary. Kinga, you came really early. I will give you the formation token after my aunt catches all the fish. In the middle of the fish pond, a middle-aged woman in simple clothes wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled innocently. Immortal cultivators are nourished by spiritual energy, and generally look good. However, the skin of this short woman is slightly rough. Because of years of fishing, her face is tanned and her knuckles are thick. Only the corners of her eyes and eyebrows can show a few traces of her former beauty. I'm not in a hurry, aunt. You go first. Li Quanqing looked at the woman who was struggling to cast spells and salvage the fish, and sighed slightly in his heart. His uncle, who is so unreliable, married a virtuous woman. He could see that, because of years of hard work to support the family, his aunt's cultivation had obviously regressed. The fairy who used to be bright-eyed and kind-looking has now become a yellow-faced woman. When the last big black carp in the water was caught in the fish basket, the aunt finally felt at ease. In order to explore the ancient cave, Li Yuheng took away all the spiritual stones in the house and exchanged them for talismans and elixirs. The mother and son relied on these spiritual fish to survive this period. Seeing that she had delayed for more than an hour, she was also quite apologetic. Kinga, I'm so sorry, you can use this green jade carp to replenish your body. No, I heard that my cousin Kwansu has just entered the weapon refining hall, and it is a time of high expenses. Auntie should sell the spiritual stones. Li Quanqing shook his head and watched the woman leave. Then he manipulated the fish pond token he had just obtained to open the formation. The misty spiritual energy came to his face, which was really refreshing. Li Quanqing looked around the fish pond and felt quite satisfied. He threw those male and female breeding fish with sturdy bodies and swollen bellies into the fish pond and specially sprinkled the carp-specific acacia incense configured by the family. The spiritual energy here is abundant, and the fish eggs produced can have better talents. Although the chance is very small, it is possible for the big black carp to transform into a green jade carp. After finishing his work, Li Quanqing resealed the formation and headed straight for Kingayu Island. In the east of the island, a towering ancient palace stands, with green bricks and tiles, carved beams and painted rafters, and a very ancient and heavy atmosphere. Changqing Palace. Deacons and elders shuttled between them, very busy, responsible for the various affairs of more than 2,000 cultivators in the entire Li family. Li Quanqing was familiar with the road and came to the side hall where the family purchased spiritual fish. There were quite a few people here, all of them were full of fishy smell, carrying a good harvest of fish baskets, and their faces were filled with the joy of a good harvest. The family elder with white hair and beard, dressed as a fisherman, raised his eyes and looked at him. Which island is this young man from? He looks a little unfamiliar. Kingpan Island branch, Li Quanqing. Li Quanqing took out the identity jade card issued by the family, and his magic power was poured into it, instantly revealing his appearance and various information. I remember now. It's the one left by Uru. The elder patted his head and looked at the young man in front of him with a little surprise. At the third level of key refining, the speed of cultivation is not slow. Li Quanqing smiled slightly and said nothing. The parents of this body are actually very talented. His mother Li Uru is a body refining cultivator. She beat many Li family members, including his uncle, and broke their Tao hearts one by one. She can be called a fighting maniac. Although his father Li Yuping was born immortal and has no background, he is a real first-class top-grade talisman master with a rich family. The elder checked the big black carp in the fish basket and looked quite satisfied. This is your first time to raise fish, right? These big black carps are well raised and full of life. He wiped the water stains on his beard. The water arrows were so thick, it was indeed a good product. I have been exploring for a year, and finally I have some experience. With the help of the golden finger, the scales of the big black carp are bright, fat and strong. I'll give you 10 spirit stones, 87 spirit sands, and the same contribution points. Thank you for your contribution to the family. The elder made a record and asked someone to fetch the spirit stones and handed them to Li Quanqing. If these big blue fish were transported to those immortal cultivation markets, they would definitely be sold at a high price of 15 spirit stones. But the journey was long, and although the family's purchase price was low, there were also corresponding contribution points. 10.87 family contribution points, plus the spirit stones, were equivalent to double the price. After collecting the spirit stones, Li Quanqing walked out of the Changqing Hall and headed towards the west of the island. He was going to go to the Sutra library to learn the subsequent scriptures of golden water art and then buy some bait. Chapter 5. The Rising Tide. Sutra Library. The bamboos are quiet and secluded, and the mountains are in the shadow. The Li family hollowed out a mountain to store the jade slips of scriptures. Li Quanqing stepped on the mossy stone steps, and the faint sandalwood lingered around his nose, making him relax all over. Meet the fourth elder. In front of the Sutra library, an old man in a purple robe was half lying on the back of a stone turtle sculpture. His robe was embroidered with fish and dragon patterns that looked like green jade carp, and he was lazily basking in the sun. Li Quanqing bowed respectfully and then walked into the Sutra library. A little sunlight fell from the top of his head, illuminating the scene inside. The whole mountain was hollowed out, and shrine-like caves were carved out on the surrounding stone walls, and jade slips of different colors were enshrined inside. The area of Gangfa, the area of magic, the area of Danshu, the area of Fengshu. The jade slips were classified and organized very clearly. Although there were many of them, they were all common goods at the level of key refining. There was only one pitiful jade slip involved in the field of foundation building. Li Quanqing looked up, his eyes passed through many scriptures, and looked directly at the top. The azure blue light bloomed dazzlingly, like a sun hanging there, and the shape of the jade slip was looming inside the glow. The sound of waves surging sounded, and even from such a distance, it could still be heard, majestic and mighty. The rising tide of the blue sea. Li Quanqing stared at the jade slip with an extremely eager gaze. This is a Li family's clan martial arts. In the family's 700-year history, the most foundation building cultivators practiced this martial arts. Unfortunately, he did not have enough contribution points to exchange for this precious Taoist scripture. Li Quanqing walked into the basic martial arts area honestly, broke the formation with his identity jade card, and took out the golden water art. After mastering the water control technique, he was ready to practice a new spell. Considering that he would inevitably fight with others in the future, Li Quanqing locked his eyes on the gold magic area. The golden key is indestructible and sharp, which is the way of killing and destruction. It is most suitable to be a powerful killer for key refining cultivators. Melting gold, gold brick technique, sharp technique, golden light cover. Combined with his poor storage bag, mediocre brain and comprehension, Li Quanqing finally chose a low-grade gold-based spell with good lethality. Gengjin Sword. Holding 2 jade slips, Li Quanqing walked towards the door without looking back. Gold and water technique. According to the clan law, Li clan members who practice this basic spell can be exempted from contribution points. Only one copy. Gengjin Sword, a gold-based spell, worth 5 family contribution points. The fourth elder turned over on the back of the stone turtle. He didn't open his eyes, but he had a clear insight into everything in the Sutra Pavilion. Swipe the identity jade card. The old man patted the turtle shell and saw that there was a dent on the forehead of the stone turtle. Li Quanqing pressed the jade card in, and it fit tightly. A flash of light flashed by, and 5 points were deducted immediately. At the same time, the 2 jade slips also made a crisp sound, and the anti-peeping prohibition contained in them was broken. Really smart. Li Quanqing sighed in his heart. The entire Qingyu Island was covered by the clan protection formation, and it was extremely convenient and fast to act. After putting the jade slip into the storage bag, Li Quanqing bowed to the old man again, and then left the Sutra library. He walked towards the north, preparing to go to the trading area on the island, to buy some fish food. If possible, he also wanted to buy a few spirit beast cubs, preferably with gold attributes. Perhaps to reward the experience bar of Gengjin Finger. Is this clan brother going to the Yulong district? Li Quanqing just took out the magic talisman and saw the mountains and forests shaking. The birds startled and a huge monster came out. It was a big crab comparable to a hill, and the blue-gray shell was covered with rock-like patterns, like a solid fortress. The huge body cast a large shadow on the ground, giving people a strong sense of oppression. There were dozens of chairs on the back of the crab monster, and many members of the Li family were sitting on them. The family's island patrol envoy. Li Quanqing's eyes lit up. Qingyu Island was really too big, with a radius of 500 miles. They, the key refining monks who didn't have flying magic tools, had to work hard every time they traveled. Where there is demand, new business opportunities will naturally be born. The island patrol envoy in front of him was only in his early 30s, and his cultivation had reached the 6th level of key refining. He looked handsome, and had the temperament of a businessman. The other party stood on the big head of the crab monster, and said with a smile, sincerely, 2 spiritual sands. Although Li Quanqing was not rich, he still had some spiritual stones. He climbed onto the crab shell neatly, and sat down leisurely. Boom. The crab monster rumbled forward in the mountains and forests, and its long crab legs stretched out, which were dozens of meters long, making a sharp sound of breaking the wind. This kind of monster not only travels very fast, but can also easily cross various obstacles. It can be said to be rampant and domineering, patrolling the entire island. Soon, a large expanse of emerald green water came into view, dark and deep, with no end in sight. We have arrived at Yulongton. Please jump in an orderly manner. Don't make noise. Don't disturb. Li Quanqing took a deep breath of water vapor, and the coolness was accompanied by a hint of chill, which froze people's eyebrows. There is a landmark building in each of the 4 directions of Qingyu Island: Changqing Hall, Sutra Pavilion, Refining Hall, and Yulongton. Of course, Yulongton has another down-to-earth nickname: Class A Fish Pond Area. The water is as smooth as a mirror, and the shore is piled with white and fine gravel, creating a long and narrow beach. A miniature trading market was born here, with shops lined up, and dividing 2 main roads paved with green rocks. Li Quanqing was familiar with the road, and walked into the shop he often went to buy a batch of fish bait. Ordinary bait costs 100 kilograms of spiritual sand, and higher-level spiritual bait costs 1 kilogram of spiritual sand. He had experience in fish farming, and was ready to expand the scale. He bought more than 20,000 kilograms of bait, which was sent to his cave by the store. Take a look, take a look. Fresh and smooth raw fish sashimi, the big black carp raised at home. The taste is so fresh. Spiritual talismans. Cleaning talismans, dust removal talismans, divine movement talismans, rejuvenation talismans, immobilization talismans, fog hiding talismans, winding talismans, detoxification talismans are on sale. Li Quanqing walked on the street of Fangxi, and the noisy hawking on both sides was endless, just like a busy market in the secular world. Immortal cultivators would definitely not do such a thing, and they would not lose face. They were all mortals of the Li family without spiritual roots. They were hired to work, and could earn a few spiritual sands to save. Huh. There are actually demon hunters? Li Quanqing's expression changed slightly, and he smelled a bloody smell at the tip of his nose. On a street stall, a cold-faced cultivator wearing a waterproof robe sat cross-legged, and many people gathered in front of the stall. There were all kinds of monster materials, such as turtle shells, fish scales, python skins, sea beast horns, etc. "My clan brother, do you have monster eggs and cubs for sale?" Li Quanqing smiled shyly. The cold-faced monk glanced at him and said indifferently, "Want to raise a spirit beast? Those are all high-end goods. You have to go to the monk's trade fair or the big market to find them. Thank you for your advice, clan brother." Li Quanqing remembered it in his heart and looked through the things on the stall to see if there was anything useful for him. Suddenly, his eyes fixed, and a few lines of text popped up in front of him. "The Fess's fossil of an unknown high-level monster contains dragon scale grass seeds. After swallowing, it will help the growth and transformation of the jade carp." Looking at the grey stone, Li Quanqing's fingers couldn't help but tremble a few times. Although he was very happy to develop the new function of the golden finger, he just touched it with his own hands. "How much is this stone?" Li Quanqing wiped his hands calmly. He had just read about dragon scale grass in a book. It only grows in places stained with blood by Jiamang monsters. It is a rare and precious spiritual grass. The excrement of high-level monsters can drive away and shock ordinary monsters, and can also be used to fertilize the field's one spiritual stone. The cold-faced monk said, obviously knowing the goods on his stall very well. "You dare to sell such a dirty thing for 100 spiritual sands? It's too expensive." Li Quanqing was a little speechless and prepared to bargain. The stall owner shrugged. "Business is not very good, so the price is a bit high. After all, I have to make a living." Well, Li Quanqing was defeated by the sincerity of this brother. "How about this? 10 spiritual sands. If it works, I will pay." The cold-faced monk scratched his head. "I'm not very good at doing business. I will give you 80 spiritual sands. It can't be cheaper." In the end, Li Quanqing successfully won it at the price of 48 spiritual sands. Carefully wrapping the fossil with cotton cloth and putting it into the storage bag, Li Quanqing finally felt relieved. He clapped his hands and was about to leave Yulongton with satisfaction when he heard a commotion at the entrance of the market. "Someone is selling magic tools on the street." With a clatter, the whole street was instantly in an uproar. Chapter 6, Equipment Master. Magical instruments? Li Quanqing was quite puzzled. There were several magic instrument shops in the market, which were not rare. These guys were really excited beyond common sense. The price of magic instruments is amazing. At least it is worth 20 to 30 spirit stones. Usually they are consigned in the shop. Selling magic instruments on the street, there is only one possibility in all these years. The cold-faced monk explained kindly, with deep envy in his eyes. Someone of the clansmen was promoted to a formal first-level refiner, and this is how he announced it to everyone. Li Quanqing was slightly shocked. These guys in the refining hall were really high profile. He also understood at this time that people were not interested in an ordinary magic instrument, but a distinguished refiner who was about to rise to prominence. Li Quanqing was also very curious. He followed the flow of people and finally saw the face of this mysterious refiner. If you have to use words to describe him, there are only 4 words. Unremarkable appearance. A middle-aged man with an unremarkable appearance, who looked to be in his 40s, had a few strands of white hair on his temples. The Taoist robe he was wearing was also worn out. Only the patch with dragon and fish patterns surrounded by flames showed his identity as a member of the weapon refining hall. Everyone. According to the practice of the weapon refining hall, I will sell the first magic weapon I have refined here today. In sharp contrast to the worn out robes, was the man's piercing eyes, and the whole person was in an extremely excited state. There was no need to deliberately ask. Someone in the crowd immediately recognized the other party's identity, so everyone knew the life story of this weapon refiner. Born in a humble family, with poor spiritual roots and no background, but with great perseverance and tenacity, in the end, late bloomer, fish leaping over the dragon gate. Li Quanqing scratched his ears, always feeling like he was listening to a chicken soup story in a storybook. Warm and caring. Finally, the weapon refiner took out his own work, a long sword with a cold glow, like countless green fish scales stacked together. Magical weapon, green carp sword. The Li family started with the green jade carp, and the value of this spiritual fish has been developed to the extreme. The green carp sword, the green scale shield, and the green jade armor. These three magic tools are the golden signs of the green jade Li family. They are sold well in dozens of islands, and their reputation is far-reaching. They can earn a large amount of spiritual stones every year. The status of the family's weapon refiners has also risen, and all the boys and girls are eager to enter the weapon hall to learn. However, the green carp sword is generally a medium-grade magic tool. The one in front of you is only a low-grade one, which shows that the craftsmanship is indeed not good. Even so, it is still sold at a high price, and it was eventually bought by a wealthy family member for 60 spiritual stones to make a good relationship. It turns out that there is no future in raising fish. The weapon refiner is the kingly way. Li Quanqing was full of emotion. A low-grade magic tool is enough for him to sell many large black carps. After watching the excitement, the crowd gradually dispersed, and Yulongtan returned to its former tranquility, and the waves still silently beat against the shore. Days passed, and Li Quanqing once again lived a plain life as a fisherman. Fish pond in Area B. Gengjin finger. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged on the lotus platform, pinching the magic formula with his hands, and his fingers were like swords. The magic power surged, circulated in the meridians in some mysterious way, and finally erupted like volcanic magma. Whoosh! Li Quanqing's index finger was seen shining with golden light, condensing into a golden needle and shooting out, raising a barely perceptible wave in the water. Finally got started. Seeing this, Li Quanqing couldn't help but smile slightly, quite satisfied. Half a month had passed since he returned from Qingyu Island that day. He practiced hard day and night, and finally comprehended this magic thoroughly and got started. Gurgle. The water surface gurgled, and a big black fish floated up with its white belly turned upside down. The brain hole on its forehead was wide open, and blood kept coming out. Not bad. It seems that today's lunch is settled. Li Quanqing just showed his joy when he saw bubbles surging on the water surface. One after another, big black carps emerged from the whirlpool, spitting water arrows densely, and making a sound of pop pop. These big black carps were only the size of a palm, and they were all the young fish bred by the batch of breeding fish, but they had already mastered the water arrow technique to perfection. Is it because of the strong genes of their parents, or the abundant spiritual energy in the fish pond in Area B? These young fish are too fierce, and like to spit at people so much. Li Quanqing was quite troubled. He took out a purple-red grass seed, which exuded a strange smell, like the sweet smell of monster blood. Smelling this smell, the young fish immediately fell into an excited state, jumping on the water surface, splashing water, and the whole fish pond was boiling. Moo. The dull thunder-like cry echoed under the water surface, and two jade carps swam up and arrogantly drove all the big black carps out of this area. What Li Quanqing held in his hand was a seed of dragon scale grass. Unfortunately, because it has been through so many years, it has become shriveled and lifeless, making it difficult to grow, so it can only be used to feed fish. The last grass seed. Let's see which of you can grab it. Li Quanqing threw it casually, and the grass seed fell into the water in a parabola. The calm fish pond was instantly stirred up by huge waves, and the two spirit fish fought for food. As their fins swung, the demonic energy rolled, and they manipulated water bullets to hit each other, making a lot of noise and fighting fiercely. The final result was unexpected. It turned out that the male Qingyu carp successfully swallowed the grass seed, and the fishtail excitedly slapped the water surface, making a bang. Although this guy is not yet mature, his body is actually a circle larger than his wife, nearly 2 feet long. The fine jade fish scales are pale green, and wisps of demonic energy swirl under the skin, which is actually quite impressive. Sashimi jade carp. After eating this delicious food, I feel like I'm getting stronger. Maturity. 95%. Li Quanqing touched the smooth back of the jade carp. This was also the first time he raised this kind of spiritual fish, and he was a little unsure. This guy must be fine in appearance. He looks very demonic, fat, and strong. After all, he eats and sleeps and eats, so the flesh on his body must grow fast. But jade carp can enter maturity after 1 year of breeding, and such a large body also proves this. but the golden finger reminds that male jade carp can only be considered as a minor at present. Li Quanqing had no choice but to invite a professional. "Brother King, what can I do for you, old man?" Outside the fish pond, Li Quanqing shouted while propping up the fishing boat, knocking on the formation with the jade pipe on his waist. "Uncle 19, I'm not sure about the jade carp I'm raising, so please come and take a look." Li Quanqing opened the formation. The old man has been raising fish for 60 or 70 years. He is a real fisherman with rich experience. "Is this the fish pond in Area B? Such abundant spiritual energy." The old man was surprised, bent down and scooped up a handful of clear water, and praised it repeatedly. "Pa." A big black carp popped its head out from the bottom of the boat and spit out a big and thick water arrow at the uninvited guest. "Naughty." Li Quanqing smiled and stretched out his dry hands like chicken claws, and the magic power bloomed at his fingertips. Suddenly, this water arrow in the air was controlled by the old man, and it moved as he wished, and turned into a water rope to tie up the big black carp. Water control technique. Li Quanqing was relieved immediately. Just by looking at this superb basic magic, we know that the old man is not in vain. "Uncle 19, come and take a look at my spiritual fish." Li Quanqing called the male jade carp over, and the fish fins fluttered in the water, as elegant as brocade. Li Quanqing took a few glances and suddenly exclaimed, "Incredible. Kinga, your green jade carp is incredible." Chapter 7, Jade Carp with Golden Pattern. "It's incredible? Uncle, please tell me in detail." Li Quanqing immediately became interested. Li Quanqing didn't waste any more words. He reached into the water with his big hand and was about to fish out the green jade carp. The male green jade carp was frightened and immediately arched its body and struggled violently. The demonic energy was surging, and it had a strength of hundreds of pounds. But the old man's cultivation was quite strong. Under the suppression of magic power, he easily caught the spirit fish on the deck. The fish body is full, the fins are symmetrical and intact, the fish scales are bright in color, arranged neatly, the patterns are clear, the mouth is square, and the fish eyes are bright and energetic. It is indeed a first-class good product. Of course, the most important thing is here. "Kinga, come and see." Li Quanqing knocked on the dorsal scales behind the fish head with his pipe, making a crisp sound like golden dun. The old man exerted a little force with his palm, and with a click, the green fish scale actually broke open, revealing the new scales underneath. A touch of golden light flashed, like fine gold jumping into the eyes, forming dots on the surface of the fish scales. "Is this a golden veined jade carp?" Li Quanqing asked uncertainly. "Yes, this jade carp actually has some signs of blood reversion, and will soon grow golden veins." Li Quanqing nodded, confirming his guess. "It's a good show. It's really a good show." Li Quanqing, with the title of "Fish Life is Bad," the male jade carp opened his mouth and blew bubbles. His eyes were confused and innocent. "You are a guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes. You said that we would all be bad together. You secretly betrayed your wife, right?" Li Quanqing gave this guy a brain blast, but he was very satisfied. For ordinary jade carp, growing to the middle stage of key refining is already the limit of its own strength, and its scales are generally used to forge the blue carp sword. Only by growing golden veins can it break through the late stage of key refining, and even have the potential to become a carp king. The material of the top grade magic weapon Gengjin shield is this kind of golden veined fish scales, and its defense is quite strong. After confirming that there is no problem with the spirit fish, Li Quanqing released the jade carp back into the fish pond. "I have been raising fish for so many years, but I have only bred 8 golden jade carps. Kinga, you have such a top quality fish in your first year of raising fish. It's really amazing." The old man gave a thumbs up, feeling like he was beaten to death on the beach by the waves behind. Li Quanqing scratched his head, a little embarrassed. He felt that the evolution of this useless fish was inseparable from the seeds of the dragon scale grass. Li Quanqing flipped through the storage bag and took out a booklet. "This is my experience in raising golden jade carps for many years. It should be able to accelerate the growth of this spiritual fish. I will give it to Kinga. Uncle 19, this is too precious. I can't take it." Li Quanqing waved his hand and refused. In the world of cultivating immortals, this kind of precious experience can be regarded as an inexhaustible spiritual stone mine. all casual cultivators will go crazy when they see it. Even within the Li family, it is a secret that is not passed on between branches. After all, it is an ancient society, and the dissemination and acquisition of knowledge is as difficult as ascending to heaven. Take it. It's worthless. The old man is counting on Kinga to rise to prominence in the future. Li Quanqing laughed, and his old eyes, which were covered with fine lines, narrowed with laughter. He was over 90 years old, and he still had the ability to judge people. In the eyes of the old man, Li Quanqing was definitely not an ordinary person, and he would eventually rise to prominence. A booklet that could be copied was definitely worth using to establish a relationship. Li Quanqing returned the favor and took out the best ingredients to treat the old man to a meal. The plump and juicy big blue fish was roasted, steamed, and stewed, and the king spiritual rice grown by the family tenants was fragrant when cooked, which made people's appetites open. The fish meat was tender and delicious. The spiritual rice melted in the mouth, and with the sweet and sour spiritual fruit, it was really a fairy day. After a meal, not only did he satisfy his appetite, but he also felt the spiritual energy spread into his limbs and bones, making his whole body comfortable. It was like swallowing a few tonic pills. Li Quanqing also knows how to enjoy himself. After dinner, he specially brewed a pot of spiritual tea, and the purple clay pot was bubbling with steam. The mist was vast and the water was bright. The grandfather and grandson sat on the fishing boat, sipping tea and watching the water. They were comfortable and relaxed, as beautiful as a painting. They talked about everything, and the topic came to the ancient cave that appeared near the sea. That cave is incredible. Many people died this time. I heard that masters at the level of key refining great perfection were killed. Li Quanqing sipped the tea and thought of his youngest son who died in the ruins decades ago. He was deeply moved. Isn't it just an ancient casual cultivator who failed to break through the foundation building? How did he attract such a great master? Li Quanqing heard his uncle mention the specific situation of this cave. Key refining great perfection, even in the Qingyu Li family, is the level of a powerful elder. That was indeed the case at the beginning, but unfortunately something unexpected happened later. The old man puffed on his tobacco, puffing out smoke. After breaking through the depths of the ruins, people discovered that there was an even more ancient formation inside, with a formation hidden within a formation. So everyone went crazy. There were all kinds of outrageous rumors about the foundation building tomb, the inheritance of the golden elixir, and the killing was so miserable. Li Quanqing grinned, with a taste of gloating. As a member of the foundation building family, with a big tree behind him, he has the confidence to sit on the fishing platform. Even if he raises spirit fish for a lifetime, he can still have no worries about food and clothing, and the annual salary spirit stones issued by the family are enough to live a comfortable life. There is no need to learn from those poor casual cultivators who can fight for a few spirit sands. Li Quanqing drank tea, but he thought of his uncle Li Yuheng in his heart. However, with the fish pond deed in hand, even if the other party is really unlucky and dies, he will not lose anything. After sending the old man away, Li Quanqing began to look through the booklet. Unexpectedly, in addition to Li Quanqing's records, the book also contained his ancestors' experience in raising green jade carp. It can be said to be a legacy accumulated over hundreds of years. This favor is a bit too much. Li Quanqing sighed. He didn't know if his ancestors had left such things. It was probably taken away by his uncle. It is also possible that, because of the abundant spiritual energy in the fish pond in Area B, the probability of raising golden jade carp is very high. So no one has systematically summarized these things. The earth spirit earthworms are ground into powder with fermented spiritual rice husks, and then mixed into pills with spiritual stone liquid, which can accelerate the growth of golden jade carp. Li Quanqing read carefully and memorize these things. Earth spirit earthworms are earthworms raised in spiritual fields. There are earthworms in the Medicine Valley on Qingyu Island. They are not monsters at all. Spiritual rice husks are simpler. Ask those spiritual farmers. Maybe you can get them for free. It took a few days for Li Quanqing to easily make this kind of spiritual earthworm bait, which smelled of a pungent sour smell. However, it is indeed very tempting to the fish. The big black carps smelled the smell and their eyes were about to turn red. The two green jade carps also had a big appetite and seemed to like it very much. It must be said that Mr. Li Quanqing is really capable. Before, the male green jade carp grew a little mature in half a month. After eating this kind of spiritual earthworm bait pill, the speed increased by a full double, and it can grow a little in 7 or 8 days. Li Quanqing carefully observed that the evolution process of the golden jade carp was somewhat similar to the molting of a python, with new scales growing from under the skin. More than a month later, the surface of the regrown fish scales had more and more golden spots. There were dots, as if they were connected to form a golden fine line on the back. It looked extraordinary. In addition to carefully raising the green jade carp, Li Quanqing did not forget the big black carps. He moved all the fish cubs in the fish pond of Area C to the fish pond of Area B, which was more spiritual. Occasionally, he used spiritual earthworm bait pills and high-level fish baits to feed them, which was quite expensive. As a result, several large black carps matured almost every day, and new light balls were given out every now and then. Harvest an adult large black carp and receive a low-grade talisman, the water arrow talisman. Right square bracket. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Kunli. The white ball of light dissipated, and a water blue talisman appeared in his hand, which felt tough and thick. Li Quanqing looked at the water arrow drawn on the surface of the talisman, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This really fits the characteristics of the big black carp. He felt a power surging in the talisman, and the power was actually not weak, comparable to the attack of a cultivator at the 3rd level of key refining. It is considered a fine product among the lower grade talismans. Could it be that, because they see that I'm not good at fighting, they opened this kind of light ball so that I can use various talismans to hit people in the future? Li Quanqing put the talismans into the storage bag and sorted them out. Fortunately, his father was a talisman master, so it would be a good idea to use them in the future. It's a pity that my cheap father passed away suddenly and did not leave any inheritance. Otherwise it would be nice to try to be a talisman master. Li Quanqing thought about it and continued to look for mature fish fry in the fish pond. Soon, he made a new discovery. An exceptionally fat big black carp appeared in the field of vision with a ball of light on its head. Its short and thick fin struggled to swim. It was unknown how much bait it had greedily eaten. Harvest an adult big black carp and reward 3 spiritual sands. This reward is great. Touching the 3 crystal clear spiritual sands, Li Quanqing was extremely satisfied. A qualified big black carp should produce spiritual stones by itself. I forgive your greed. After taking out the bait to feed the fat big black carp, Li Quanqing immediately harvested 2 more spiritual light balls, and his cultivation reached a higher level. The big black carp enters the mature stage in half a year, and the time can be appropriately shortened under the condition of abundant spiritual energy. Li Quanqing estimated that in another 3 or 4 months, this batch of spitting fish cubs will collectively enter the mature stage. By then, with the blessing of the spiritual light balls, he can be piled up to the 4th level of key refining. Who would still sit in meditation bitterly when they can cheat? Breaking through a small realm in half a year, isn't that a bit fast? I feel like I'll be able to achieve the great perfection of key refining when I'm 20. Li Quanqing's eyebrows were full of joy, and he couldn't help but imagine his future. After breaking through the middle stage of key refining, he could start trying to refine weapons. If he really has extraordinary talent and becomes a weapon refiner, he would have plenty of spirit stones. At that time, he would use the spirit stones to expand the fish pond, raise a large number of green jade carp, and continue to break through with the help of the light ball rewards, forming a virtuous circle. Sooner or later, he will be able to buy the spirit island and become the master of the island. Dang dang. Li Quanqing was immersed in a bright future, but the formation protecting the fish pond was suddenly hit hard by someone, making a dull sound. A 13 or 14-year-old boy stood there, his head raised proudly, his face full of impatience. Li Quanqing frowned, looked at the brat carefully, and said uncertainly, "Cousin Quanzu?" Li Quanzu snorted and looked at him sideways. "It's me. Quickly open the formation of my fish pond." The rude and arrogant boy in front of him was the biological son of his uncle Li Yuheng. Li Quanqing's heart was moved, and he laughed. What do you mean your fish pond? Your father has mortgaged the title deed to me. Now it's my fish pond. It's just spirit stones. Here you go. Li Quanqing took out a storage bag and curled his lips. It's just 500 spirit stones. Return the title deed to my family. Oh, this brat is very arrogant. Li Quanqing touched his chin and had some guesses. Is your father back? Of course, my father not only broke through the 6th level of key refining, but also got a lot of treasures in the ruins. Li Quanqing proudly showed off. See this kingly sword? I just bought it. What's the future of staying on the island every day to raise fish? The whole body is full of fishy smell, and the joy of revenge is to be free and unrestrained with a sword. This is the right way for our generation. Cultivate bravely and step into the road of immortality. The young man made an impassioned speech. His eyes were shining, and his heart was full of yearning for the outside world. He was at the age of the most second-year students. Then he was hit on the back of his head. Ouch. Who dares to hit me? Li Quanqing covered his head and shouted. He turned around, but his fierce momentum withered. The old man dressed as a refiner stood there, with a dignified appearance, curly hair and beard, and his robe was embroidered with fish and dragons surrounded by flames. He was as burly as an iron tower and copper mountain. Great Hall Master. Li Quanqing was visibly nervous, and began to stutter, like a wilted quail. He was no longer arrogant. Li Quanqing had seen the old man coming over the waves early in the morning, and now he respectfully opened the formation. Meet the third elder. Li Quanqing, the head of the weapon refining hall, the family's top weapon refiner. Of course, the most important thing is that he is also the younger brother of a foundation building cultivator in the Li family. You just said that you look down on our Li family's fishermen and farmers? The old man stared with a pair of tiger eyes, and his voice was like a bell, making the young man's ears buzz. I didn't. Li Quanqing stiffened his neck and racked his brains to think of an excuse. I just think that our Li family cultivators should be tougher and have a few more invincible sword cultivators of the same level. Otherwise, others will call our Qingyu Li family's mighty name as Qingyu Li family. Li Quanqing laughed when he heard this and opened his big hand to slap him again. Snap. It's just a few rumors. They didn't steal the spiritual fish and rice from our island. If you're not happy with it, why don't you scold them back on the spot? Just a coward like your father. Slap. What's wrong with the green fish Li family? I think this name is more appropriate. Without the green jade spiritual fish raised by the tribesmen, where would the materials come from to refine the green carp sword in your hand? Where would the family get the spiritual stones to pay the salary? Slap. Get out of here. Li Quanqing covered his swollen head miserably, and his eyes were full of mist and grievance. He didn't dare to vent his grievance and anger, and was about to run away with his tail between his legs, but he was slapped on the forehead again. Slap. Leave the storage bag. Don't you want the title deed? The bag with a gleaming light crossed a parabola and fell into Li Quanqing's arms. He was about to take out the title deed, but his cousin ran away without a trace, crying faintly, so he had to give up. Li Quanqing looked at the old man, swallowed his throat, and felt a little scared. What do you want to see me for, elder? Li Quanqing took a big step and stepped into the formation with a tiger-like wind. The hot breath rushed to his face, like a flaming furnace standing on the water, and the whole fish pond was about to be boiled. I came to distribute the salary of the last quarter to the clan members. I didn't find you in the fish pond of area C. It was brother Kunshu who told me about this location. Paying salaries? Li Quanqing was flattered. The salaries of the Li clan members were paid every 3 months. Previously, they were distributed by the deacons of the Chanqing Hall. The master of the Chanqing Hall was the eldest elder of the family, and the master of the refining hall in front of him was the third elder of the family. The swordplay behind the scenes. Li Quanqing didn't dare to think about it anymore. The open and secret struggles among the top leaders of the family were not something that a small branch of him could know or even participate in. The salary of a key refining level 2 cultivator is 2 spirit stones. Take them. Li Quanqing was holding the clan roster and was about to take out the spirit stones when he suddenly exclaimed and discovered the change in the boy's cultivation. You kid actually broke through to the 3rd level? He couldn't tell the truth for a while because of the lotus formation. Li Quanqing didn't think of hiding it and bowed. I broke through by chance half a month ago, but I haven't had time to report it to the family. Not bad. Better than those rubbish in the direct lineage. Li Quanqing smiled and took out 2 more spirit stones. Follow the rules after the breakthrough. A key refining level 3 cultivator will receive a salary of 4 spirit stones per quarter. Chapter 9 Male Fish Maturation. Li Quanqing grabbed 4 spirit stones, which were warm to the touch, and a trace of cold spiritual energy penetrated his skin into his meridians. 4 salaries per quarter, 16 spirit stones a year. When he breaks through the 4th level of key refining, he will have 32, and the 5th level will have 64. When he reaches the 6th level of key refining, even if he does nothing and lies down for a whole year, he will have more than 100 spirit stones in his account. The family welfare is really good. However, the Li family does not support idle people. If you have not broken through a small realm in 10 years, your salary will be automatically reduced by half. Are you interested in joining the weapon hall and learning the way of refining weapons? Li Quanqing wandered around the fish pond, not in a hurry to leave, and threw out his olive branch. In his opinion, the young man in front of him is indeed a rough jade in the family, and he has no background. When he grows up in the future, he will definitely be a great help to his faction. Li Quanqing was stunned and considered his words. Of course I'm willing to do it, but learning to refine equipment costs too much, and I haven't saved up enough spirit stones yet. Li Quanqing pointed to the storage bag in the boy's arms and said with a smile, "You are not poor. Are you worried about your own fish pond? Don't worry, raising fish and refining equipment do not conflict. When I was young, I was also a very famous fisherman in the family." Li Quanqing was a little embarrassed. "I use the contribution points left by my parents to mortgage these spirit stones to the family. Then just don't pay it back. Anyway, there is no use in keeping this thing, so it should be turned into nourishment on the road of cultivation." The old man smiled and said, "Or do you want to learn from those stingy people in the family and save up enough contribution points in exchange for the priority choice of the foundation building pill? How could that be? I just want to save up 1000 contribution points in exchange for the blue sea tide rising power in the Sutra Pavilion." Li Quanqing waved his hands quickly. "I would be very lucky if I could break through the late stage of key refining in this life. How dare I hope to build a foundation? You don't even dare to think about this idea. You really don't have the vigor and vitality of a young person." Li Quanqing shook his head. "If you want to learn the clan guarding scripture, there are many ways, such as the clan competition a few years later. If you get into the top 10, you will be exempted from the contribution points." Clan competition? Li Quanqing was stunned. This thing is held every 10 years, and he really doesn't know much about it. Or you are gifted in refining weapons, and you want to go the way of the weapon hall. I'll ask the clan leader. The old man was halfway through his words when he was suddenly interrupted by dense water arrows. Bah, bah, bah. The waves on the water surface surged, and more than 1,000 big black carps floated up, staring with their eyes and opening their mouths to spray thick water columns. As a cultivator with fire spirit roots, Li Quanqing was only one step away from building a foundation. The mana aura on his body was so hot that it almost boiled the lake water. The big black carps in the whole fish pond couldn't stand the heat and collectively resisted the abuse of the human cultivators. Moo. Moo. The 2 green jade carps couldn't help but swim out of the water to breathe, and they surrounded Li Quanqing, somewhat afraid of the 3rd elder's momentum. "There's actually a green jade carp with golden patterns?" Li Quanqing's eyes lit up, and as he waved his sleeves, a sea of fire blazed, evaporating all the water arrows into mist. This time, he inspected the family's sea area, in addition to officially announcing that the future salary payment would be changed to the responsibility of the refining hall. He was also preparing to find some green jade carps of excellent quality to refine a precious magic weapon. The old man only took a few glances and recognized the state of the male green jade carp. "It's well raised, and it's only a few days away from becoming a demon. How about selling it to me when it matures?" Li Quanqing naturally agreed. "I'll send it to the 3rd elder when the time comes. Don't worry, I will definitely not let you suffer a loss." Li Quanqing laughed and flicked out a nice blue pill. "I'm leaving, don't see me off." After that, He walked away with his sleeves fluttering, stepping on the water, with an immortal style and extraordinary temperament. Huolala. The fish swarmed. Hundreds of large black carps gathered on the water surface to form sparkling waves, trying to scramble for the ice blue pill. Stay aside. Li Quanqing took out the jade card to manipulate the formation. The lotus blossomed, the lotus leaves glowed, and the formation patterns intertwined on the water surface like a chessboard, separating all the large black carps. Only 2 green jade carps were not restricted. Bang! Exclamation mark. The ice blue pill melted as soon as it entered the water, and then condensed into a wheel-sized piece of ice on the water surface, which was chilling. Can this thing be eaten? Li Quanqing was still wondering, but the two-spirit fish couldn't wait. Snap, snap. The green jade carps swung their fins and slapped the surface of the ice with amazing power. Suddenly, ice chips splashed, and a crystal blue light appeared. They kept swallowing the broken ice, as if it contained an indescribable magic, and a trace of icy breath slowly emanated from their scales. Visible to the naked eye, a ball of light is forming on the forehead of the male jade carp, and it is about to enter maturity. Li Quanqing rubbed his hands, feeling the excitement of opening a blind box, curious about what kind of reward he would get. The male jade carp swallowed 2/3 of the elixir ice, and then hung in the water motionless. Gradually, where its wide fins rippled, the cold air surged, the ice spread, and it actually froze itself. The female jade carp was still lively, but the breath on her body became much colder. This silly fish won't freeze itself to death. Li Quanqing sat on the lotus platform and pondered. After half an hour, he finally saw that the ball of light was completely formed, marking that the other party officially entered maturity. Moo. The low call echoed in the fish pond, melodious and heavy, the water waves rippling, and it actually gave people an inexplicable sense of majesty. The originally restless school of big black carps suddenly became dead silent, curled up in fear, and quietly dived to the bottom of the pond. Even the surging waves were calmed by this cry, and the water surface was as smooth as a mirror for a while. Crack. The ice layer broke, and the demonic energy rolled. The male jade carp proudly rushed out of the ice, leaving a crystal watermark in the air. Its scales became much larger, deep like jade, and the layer of fine scales on its back turned into a dazzling golden color. Moo. It shouted proudly, got into the water, and swam around the female jade carp. The light blue fins waved like clouds, and the scales on its body kept opening and closing, like a peacock seeking a mate. Although this guy is now 3 feet long, Li Quanqing still easily fished it up with the water control technique. Pa. The jade carp shook its body irritably, and even imitated those big blue fish, spitting out arrows condensed from ice water, which hit the formation with great power. Passionate big blue carp, I'm finally going to be strong. Damn you, let me go. Maturity. 100%. Li Quanqing was a little confused. He didn't throw the acacia incense into the water. Could it be that the ice blue pill also has an aphrodisiac effect? However, the most urgent thing is naturally the ball of light. Looking at the attractive ball of light floating in the air, he couldn't hold himself back any longer, and reached out to touch it. Harvest a golden patterned green jade carp in the early stage of key refining, and reward a copy of the method of refining the green carp sword. Right square bracket. Chapter 10 Weapon Refining Technique. The cloud-like light exploded, turning into dots of light that sank into the top of his head. A huge and astonishing amount of knowledge was born out of thin air, as if it was roughly stuffed into his brain by a big hand. Learn it for me. This was the first time Li Quanqing had come into contact with such a vast flow of information. He felt that his head was about to burst, and the blood vessels on his forehead were throbbing. But his mind was extremely clear, and he was forced to learn those refining knowledge that he had never seen before. The method of refining the kingly sword, material identification, or smelting, embryo forging, spiritual pattern engraving. All kinds of basic knowledge of refining came in at once, and in fact, it also included many unique refining techniques of the Li family. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged on the lotus platform, keeping his mind focused, trying his best to digest this vast knowledge. Moo. The male Kingayu carp lost control of the spell, and immediately swam into the water with a flick of his tail, and went to stick with his wife. After more than an hour, Li Quanqing slowly opened his eyes. It's really not that easy. to become a weapon refiner. He exhaled a breath of foul air, kneaded his swollen eyebrows, and couldn't help but feel shocked by the complexity and profoundness of the weapon refinement. The method of refining just a medium-grade magic weapon is as vast as the sea of clouds, and it is difficult for those without talent to refine it in their entire lives. Fortunately, he can choose to take a shortcut. Li Quanqing recalled this knowledge, and it can be said that it was vivid, and all kinds of weapon refining techniques were memorized in his mind. But without actual practice, it is just talk on paper. Maybe I can go to the weapon refining hall to try it? A certain idea emerged in Li Quanqing's mind. The weapon hall costs a lot of spirit stones, in addition to the most basic school fees. It costs money to buy additional ore materials for practice, and it costs money to hire family weapon refiners, to open a small kitchen privately. Even the interpersonal exchanges between the disciples of the school also cost a lot of spirit stones. But now that he has firmly remembered these weapon refining basics, he can quickly skip the apprenticeship period, which is a novice stage. It is equivalent to directly entering the examination room with the answer to the test paper. Not only can he save a lot of spirit stones, but he can also become a weapon refiner and become a superior person in the family. After sorting out the gains and losses, Li Quanqing finally decided to join the weapon refinery hall. He took out the storage bag sent by Li Quantu and began to count the spirit stones. The words of the third elder touched him. The family competition was indeed worthwhile, and he could give it a try. Why are there 520 low-grade spirit stones? Li Quanqing frowned and found that the number was a bit wrong. He only lent out 500 spirit stones at the beginning. Could it be that my uncle has a change of heart and paid more interest? Li Quanqing shook his head and denied this idea. Li Yuheng is a stingy and miserly guy who values spirit stones more than anything else. How could he do such a thing? The figure of a gentle woman appeared in his mind. After thinking about it, he thought that his aunt was the most likely. Then bring 2 big blue fish to visit my uncle who has become rich overnight. Li Quanqing put away the spirit stones and felt at ease. Moo. The water surface rustled, and the male jade carp slowly floated up, and the pair of dead fish eyes seemed to have lost some of the brilliance. Decadent fish life. Jade carp. Zyanki is too scary. I'd better be a salted fish honestly. Eat. Sleep. Sleep. Eat. Cultivation. Key refining level 1. 1%. Li Quanqing was wondering what happened and saw the female jade carp swimming up right after him, pestering her husband and crying wildly. The most important thing is that on the plump belly of the female jade carp, there was actually a dense layer of fresh fish eggs. Maternal instinct. Jade carp. I'm so happy. I finally gave birth to a baby today. My husband was so mighty just now. Li Quanqing. He didn't expect that these 2 guys would move so quickly. In the blink of an eye, they were both pregnant. The more abundant the spiritual energy, the better the development of the fish eggs after hatching. It seems that we need to stay in this fish pond in Area B for a few more days. Li Quanqing smiled, full of expectations for this batch of green jade carp seedlings. The offspring of the golden-veined green jade carp must have extraordinary bloodlines. I wonder what rewards they can offer. The next day, after feeding the fish, Li Quanqing took the big black carp as a gift and went to visit his uncle on the spiritual island. He actually came early, but there was already a circle of visitors at the door of Li Yuheng's house. Why are there so many people? Li Quanqing was a little confused. In his memory, his uncle didn't have many friends. Hey, doesn't this young man know that Lord Yuheng has broken through the 6th level of key refining and is said to be promoted to the family steward soon? An old man next to him was full of envy. Seeing the 2 black carps in the boy's hand, he shook his head secretly. How could such a shabby gift be received and favored by the host? The 6th level of key refining is considered a mainstay even in the direct line of the Li family, let alone these weak and poor side branches. Fortunately, those mortal servants finally recognized him and led Li Quanqing into the cave without neglecting him. Master Quanqing, please wait a moment. The master is meeting those distinguished guests in the main hall. Li Quanqing looked up and looked at the palace hidden in the garden. He could faintly hear a familiar laugh. This laughter was hearty and refreshing, as if all the depression of the past few decades of life was spit out. He was too lazy to wait any longer. Take me to find my aunt. I guess my uncle doesn't want to see me at this time. In the backyard, my aunt was staying with the two cooks and was immediately happy to see him. Li Quanqing handed the big blue fish to the cook and mentioned the extra 20 spirit stones. It must have been your uncle who stuffed it in. He is stubborn and refuses to thank Kinga in person. Li Yurao smiled lightly. Although her skin was dark, 2 dimples appeared on her lips and she was gentle as water. In that case, then nephew will go and thank uncle right away. As soon as this was said, the woman was immediately anxious and hurriedly stopped him. Li Quanqing confirmed his guess and took out the deed and handed it to his aunt. This is the deed of the fish pond. My family's Kingayu carp is just breeding fish eggs. Can you forgive the formation token for a few days before returning it? Of course there is no problem. Your uncle tasted the sweetness of this expedition and indulged in it. I'm afraid he won't be able to take care of the fish pond in a short time. Li Yurao sighed. Her eyes showed worry and her heart was filled with deep uneasiness. Li Quanqing couldn't get involved in this matter. After chatting for a while, he said goodbye and left, returning to the fish pond. In a blink of an eye, 7 days passed. During this time, Li Quanqing ran to Changqing Palace and returned all the spiritual stones that he had mortgaged with his family. Then he borrowed another 100 spirit stones with his contribution points. He didn't plan to pay it back this time and planned to use it to register for the weapon hall. There are still 400 family contribution points as a backup. If the family competition fails in 2 or 3 years, we can also collect contribution points to exchange for the blue sea tide rising skill. Li Quanqing was boating in the fish pond, tapping the side of the boat with his fingers, making a unique sound. The canteen is open for dinner. The fish rushed out, the water surface rolled and boiled, and countless green scales covered the sight, smooth as a mirror, which was spectacular. Moo. Moo. 2 green jade carp swam up closely behind, slowly eating the spirit earthworm bait, with a surging demonic aura, and no big black carp dared to grab the food. Around their bodies, there was also a circle of green jade carp fry. Although they were only as thick as fingers, their appetites were really big. 1, 2, 3, 38 fry. Li Quanqing counted them, and then looked at the belly of the female green jade carp. After confirming that all the fish eggs had hatched, he nodded with satisfaction. It's time to move. Chapter 11, Hall of Weapons. Bingxi District, Fish Pond number 13. The sky is as blue as jade, reflected on the water, as clear as glass, with white clouds, beautiful as a painting. The fishing boat brushed past, the water rippled, and layers of tiny ripples appeared, breaking this ethereal and distant peace. Li Quanqing looked at his own fish pond, and couldn't help feeling emotional. Since he sold the big black carp in this fish pond, he has rarely returned here, and the water area is a little deserted. He took out the token, and manipulated the formation to divide the fish pond into 3 parts. 2 were used to feed the fry of the jade carp, and the big black carp, and the last one was used to accommodate the big fish. Plop, plop. The 38 jade carp fry were naturally the top priority, and they were carefully poured into the fish pond. These little fish were swimming in an environment where the spiritual energy suddenly dropped, and they were obviously not used to it. The small fins flapped quickly. Just bear with it. Your parents grew up here, and are still living well. Li Quanqing took out a dozen spiritual sands, crushed them, mixed them with spiritual earthworm bait pills, and sprinkled them in, temporarily increasing the concentration of spiritual energy. There are still too many fry. I don't know how many will grow up in the end. Li Quanqing touched his chin and thought. There were markings on the booklet that Grandpa Li Quanqing gave him. With the concentration of spiritual energy in the fish ponds in Area C, each acre of water can support the growth of a green jade carp. These 20 acres of water can only support 20 green jade carps at most, otherwise the spiritual energy and nutrition will not be enough. Monsters have a sense of territory, even if they are artificially raised. When these fry grow up, the activity space is too small, and they will start to kill each other due to their nature. Therefore, the big fish pond owners of the Li family will cultivate a fish king and conclude a blood contract for easy management. When these cubs grow up, pick out those with little potential and weak bodies and sell them at Yulangton Market. Young blue jade carp, this thing is still quite valuable. Hard currency. Li Quanqing was much rougher when dealing with the more than 1,000 big black carps. Like dumplings, they were thrown from the fish basket into the fish pond. For a while, the water splashed everywhere, the muddy waves rolled, and it was very lively. Looking at his own fish pond that had regained its former vitality and bustle, Li Quanqing finally clapped his hands in satisfaction. He looked at the last fish basket on the boat, which contained 2 mature blue jade carps, ready to be sold for spiritual stones. Since that rise, the male blue jade carp has returned to the state of fish raw and rotten. The cultivation level of the first level of key refining is fixed at 1% and will not move. It looks extraordinary and has great bloodline potential, but it is actually a pit. It is better to sell it early and put the spiritual stones in the bag. Mana controlled the light boat, and Li Quanqing headed straight for the main island of Qingyu. In the southern part of Qingyu Island, there stood a large area of bare stone mountains. The fire spirit in the air was particularly active, and there was a faint underground fire. The refining hall was located here. Various buildings were rough and majestic, and the palaces were undulating. Many houses were cast in copper and iron. When the Li family was first established, this place was originally called Bai Hall, where the family used to cultivate the 100 arts of cultivation and reserve talents. Later, the kitten became the only one, and became a pillar industry, so it was called the refining hall. Li Quanqing walked into the gate of the kitten, and a dark blue tripod hit the view in a very impactful way. This big tripod is taller than a small mountain, square, and engraved with a towering gate of heaven standing in the raging waves. 10,000 carps in the sea paid homage, struggling to cross the stormy waves, trying to jump over and become a dragon from fish. The scene was magnificent and lifelike, and Li Quanqing couldn't help but take a few more glances. "My cousin, are you here to learn how to refine weapons?" An elegant man in his 30s, wearing a robe from the hall, walked from behind the cauldron. After Li Quanqing finished admiring it, he asked with a smile, not disdaining the boy because of the fishy smell. Li Quanqing nodded. "Not only did I come here to learn how to refine weapons, I also wanted to see the third elder. That day, he promised to buy my golden jade carp." "Oh, it's a golden patent alien?" Li Quanlin was quite surprised. After looking up and down at this cousin, he said, "In that case, please follow me." He didn't think that Li Quanqing would lie to him. No one in the clan dared to offend the head of the refining hall with a lie. Li Quanqing walked in the huge refining hall. At first, there was the sound of iron hammering everywhere, and the air was hot. Those guys with bare upper bodies and bulging muscles could be vaguely seen. This is the fire hall, where many weapon refining masters from mortal dynasties come to teach and instruct the methods of casting various weapons. Li Quanlin explained with a smile. "Although we refine magic weapons, tracing back to the source, they are still derived from mortal weapons. Every disciple of the weapon hall must lay the foundation here. After crossing this courtyard, the environment becomes much quieter. Surrounded by bamboo and cypress, there are 3 or 2 schools. This place is called the Book Hall, which is the place to teach the basics of refining and even the engraving of spiritual patterns. The elders often come here to teach." Li Quanlin introduced it in detail. After all, the young man in front of him is about to become a member of the weapon hall. At this time, the courtyard is quiet, the wind blows the bamboo shadows, and it is the time for the book hall to teach. The voice of the teacher can be vaguely heard. Li Quanqing listened attentively, and some weapon refining terms came into his ears with the wind. He actually understood them completely. He immediately felt confident. Continue to walk in. In front of an arched door, there is actually a formation locking the entrance. Li Quanlin took out the token and shook it a few times. The moment the formation was opened, a dense white mist rushed towards him, and the spiritual energy was abundant and amazing. "Brother Quanlin." As soon as he entered the door, a middle-aged man came towards him, walking like a dragon and a tiger, with a superior temperament. "So it's junior brother Yus. Seeing your face glowing, I guess you must have returned with a lot of stuff from the Baoking market." Li Quanlin greeted him with a smile. When the man walked away, he explained in a low voice, "This is called the Dharma Hall. Only the real family weapon refiners can enter. They gather here to discuss the methods of refining and improving various magic weapons. Brother, remember not to barge in, otherwise you will be punished by the clan rules." Li Quanqing nodded quickly. Thinking of the way the two of them addressed each other just now, he was a little puzzled. Brother, I heard that the weapon refiner just now was of the U generation. Why did he call you senior brother? Hearing this, Li Quanqing smiled proudly. People in the weapon refiner hall never compete with your identity and background, but only judge by the way of refining weapons. They walked in the Dharma hall and saw more than 20 weapon refiners, all of whom were a little unrestrained, which showed that they lived a very comfortable life on weekdays. Li Quanqing even saw an acquaintance, who was the guy who sold the kingly sword in New Lantern that day. At this time, he had already changed into a brand new robe, and his gestures were quite dignified. In the deepest part of the Dharma hall, Li Quanqing finally saw his destination, a red and black active volcano. The ground was cracked, and thick smoke billowed into the sky. From time to time, red lava flowed down, burning unbearably, as if the blood of the earth was burning. The most amazing thing was that there were weapon refining rooms standing on the mountain, with formations engraved, and using magma and ground fire as energy. Li Quanqing sniffed the pungent smell of sulfur, and his face couldn't help but be slightly dazed. Although he had long known that the weapon refining hall had a profound foundation, he was still quite shocked when a volcano appeared in front of him. Brother, welcome to the real weapon hall. Li Quanqing was very satisfied with the shock on the boy's face. After all, he had been there in the past. He looked at the kingly volcano and said with a lot of emotion, if one day, my brother, you can also own one of the earth fire refining rooms, then I will call you my senior brother. Li Quanqing smiled bitterly. This is not a small goal. He looked at the flowing magma and was a little scared. Brother, we don't have to climb up again, do we? Although he is a cultivator, the magic power of the third level of key refining can't withstand the rolling power of heaven. Of course not. See those courtyards around the foot of the mountain? That's where the refiners live. Li Quanqing pointed out. Come on, I'll take you to the cave of the Hall Master. I hope he is not refining at this time. Signed he. Please read and vote. Chapter 12 Trading Fair. The third elder's cave was quite large, and the decoration was not too luxurious. The road was paved with huge black rocks, which was beautiful and grand. Fortunately, Li Quanqing was at home and asked the servant to lead them in. Deep in the cave, there was a cliff facing the sea. The sound of waves could be seen, and the turbulent sea surface could be seen. Meet the Hall Master, third elder. Li Quanqing and the other two greeted him at the same time. Both of them were very polite. Li Quanqing stood on the cliff with his back to them and smiled. Come and take a look. How about this old man's fish pond? They walked forward a few steps and suddenly saw an amazing scene. Under the cliff, a large reef stood like a razor. Undercurrents gathered, and turbid waves rose and fell, forming a natural bay. As the third elder spread the bait, the waves suddenly surged, and dozens of huge jade carps fought the waves, all with golden scales on their backs. The light was shining, and the broken gold was like rain, which was quite dazzling for a while. Li Quanqing was immediately envious. This water bay was indeed a good fish pond. Just talking about Feng Yifeng, the view overlooking the archipelago was thousands of times better than those fish ponds in Area B. He took out the fish basket he carried with him and handed it to the third elder. Li Quanqing opened his hand and took out the male jade carp and took a quick look at it. This rotten guy didn't know what he was about to face. He stared with dead fish eyes without blinking and spit bubbles innocently. Although his cultivation is a bit low, it is a golden pattern alien after all. How about 50 spirit stones for you? The third elder was wealthy and raised Li Quanqing's expectations as soon as he opened his mouth. In order to avoid being beaten in the future, he still reminded, report to the elder, this jade carp is lazy and doesn't practice very hard. That's because he lived too peacefully. When the competition is fierce and he is hungry every day, he will naturally fight hard. Li Quanqing laughed and threw the male jade carp into the fish pond below the cliff. Seeing this, Li Quanqing could only pray for this guy. The third elder also bought the female green jade carp for 5 spirit stones. I heard from Quanqing that you are ready to enter the weapon refining hall. Li Quanqing turned around, his tower-like burly body full of pressure. Li Quanqing nodded. I think what the elder said is right. There is more than one way to obtain the clan guarding scripture. That's right. Then pay the school fee. Li Quanqing spoke generously and directly. 50 spirit stones, and there will be an additional 20 spirit stones every year in the future. Li Quanqing immediately paid the spirit stones with a painful feeling. The money from the 2 green jade carps was gone in a flash. But if he wanted to make money from magic tools, this was necessary. I will write your name on the list of the weapon hall, Quanlin. Take him to get the things. Li Quanlin cupped his hands, and the smile on his face suddenly became much more friendly. Junior brother, please follow me. They came to the weapon hall and received the standard equipment for the disciples of the weapon refining hall. A jade slip containing the basics of refining, 2 sets of low-grade robes exclusive to disciples of the weapon hall, and an iron plate with identity information engraved on it. Li Quanqing put on the robe and saw a pattern of fish and dragons with flames embroidered on his chest. The spiritual light flashed, and it was impervious to water and fire and dust. Li Quanlin pointed to the fish and dragon patterns on his cuffs and shoulders and explained, formal refiners have dragon patterns embroidered on their cuffs, and mid-grade refiners have them added on their shoulders. Don't make the mistake in the future. Let's go. Senior brother will take you to the book hall to get familiar with your future brothers and sisters. Li Quanqing walked while checking the contents of the jade slip. There was too much knowledge recorded in it, more than 1,000 books, and this was just the basics of refining. When he arrived at his destination, he had already read the introduction of all the contents. Sure enough, it's exactly the same as the knowledge in the experience group. Now, I only lack practical operation. Li Quanqing suppressed his joy in his heart. With the help of cheats, he could completely pretend to be a genius in refining. At this time, there were quite a few disciples in the academy, more than 200 in total, divided into 4 apprentice levels. Xiandi Zuan Huang. Li Quanqing was naturally assigned to the last yellow level academy, where he needed to learn the basics of ore identification and detailed explanation of weapons. Li Quanqing from Kingpin Island. Nice to meet you all. When he walked into the academy to introduce himself, he actually saw an acquaintance. Cousin Li Quantu. This guy was sitting on the futon in the back, and it was incredible to see him. A guy who raises fish actually wants to be a weapon refiner? But except for this guy, the rest of the tribesmen were very polite, mostly with kindness and indifference. Since new tribesmen have come, I will take you to review what are the most common spiritual laws in this sea area. Li Quanqing sat in the corner, listening to the teacher's lecture, while observing the classmates around him. After all, the yellow level academy is for laying the foundation, and it is all young people, without those old guys who have learned to refine weapons for decades, but have not succeeded. Everyone was of similar age, all with the surname Quan, and most of them were from collateral branches, so Li Quanqing became a familiar figure in the class in just 10 days. Moreover, he had his own fish pond to rely on, so he was much richer than those young men and women who had to ask their parents for money. After school that day, Li Quanqing suddenly called a girl, Sister Quanshu. I heard that the disciples of the weapon hall occasionally hold private trading meetings. Li Quanqing was wearing a simple and elegant water blue brocade skirt, with bright eyes and a beautiful look. Her facial features could only be considered delicate, but her watery eyes were as moving as autumn water. She was also at the 3rd level of key refining, and she was 19 years old. Why, do you want to learn more? Li Quanqing smiled, with a virtuous temperament, well-proportioned bones and flesh, and a gentle voice, which made people feel very good. It was heard that, although her father was only a casual cultivator who married into the Li family, he was very motivated, and now managed a shop in the Baoqingfang market, opened by the family. Therefore, the girl was also considered to be a wealthy person in the school. As a fisherman, I'm quite interested in raising spirit beasts, so I want to exchange a few spirit beast eggs or cubs. Li Quanqing explained a few words. He planned to try more spirit beasts to open up more and rich light balls and increase the foundation. After all, the Li family is a family of immortal cultivation, and it is an acquaintance society. Anyone who gets a spirit pet cub will generally trade it privately with relatives and friends, and the family treasury will not accept this thing. That's a coincidence. I have also held a few private meetings. Are you interested in joining? Li Quanqing gathered the hair hanging down to her ears, and the fragrance surged, and she smiled. I couldn't ask for it. Li Quanqing was delighted, and immediately walked out with the girl. talking and laughing. In the evening of the next day, Li Quanqing came to the largest king island among the 7 islands as agreed. I saw a large area of king spirit rice in full bloom, rooted in the mud pond, shaped like a lotus, with green lotus leaves, and the lotus pods produced pearly and smooth spirit rice. The spiritual farmers carrying hoes returned from working in the fields. Most of them were tenants hired by the family, and there were very few Li clan members. Compared with spiritual farmers, raising spiritual fish is undoubtedly a more profitable business. Li Quanqi's cave is close to the coast, with a very beautiful scenery. There is also a large area of fiery red peach trees planted on the sea cliff behind. The small trade fair was held in this peach forest. Chapter 13, Iron Crab Stone Loach. Li Quanqing walked into the peach blossom forest, and saw the bright moon hanging in the sky, the brook gurgling, and a spiritual spring bubbling. Around the spring, there were strange rocks, and dozens of young Li clan members were already sitting cross-legged on them, many of whom were familiar faces in the cartoon. Li Quanqing generously chose a blue stone shaped like a lying carp to sit on, and looked at it with restrained eyes. It was his first time to participate in such a gathering, so he was quite curious. The time has come, and the invited clansmen have all been gathered. This peach blossom party officially begins. Li Quanqiu sat cross-legged by the spiritual spring and shook the white jade bell in her hand, which rang. According to the old rules, fellow Taoists, introduce the spiritual objects you need in order. She spoke first, and took out a pearl the size of a langan, the low-grade precious spiritual pearl produced by the Z family, in exchange for a Changyuan pill or other elixir suitable for a 3rd level key refining cultivator, to break through the bottleneck. This pearl was pure white, and under the moonlight, it actually bloomed a circle of faint light, which looked quite extraordinary. The Z family? It should be the foundation building family in the Baosu Islands. Li Quanqing thought that the Li family and the Z family had a relationship of mutual assistance. The 2 foundation building families joined forces to open a Bao Qingfang market thousands of miles away, earning spirit stones and collecting rent. This precious spirit bead contains abundant spiritual energy, which can be refined and stored in it by one's own magic power. It can be refined in an instant when fighting with others, which is quite convenient. Li Quanqiu held the bead, and began to introduce its preciousness. In short, it is a disposable mana-charging treasure. Unfortunately, although the treasure is good, the elixir of breaking the level is undoubtedly more precious, and no one wants to trade with her. Li Quanqiu looked around, and saw that no one in the tribe responded, so she had to give up, and handed the jade bell to the next person. In this order, it was soon Li Quanqing's turn. He shook the jade bell in his hand and said softly, 20 low-grade water arrow talismans, that are comparable to the attack of a 3rd level key refining cultivator, and green jade carp fry, in exchange for various spirit beast cups, and you can also trade with spirit stones. Li Quanqing thought for a while and added, the father of these green jade carps is a golden patent alien species with extraordinary blood. He took out the golden patent scales left by the male green jade carp, and put them together with the 3 fish fry. The blood aura was inherited, which was enough to prove that he was telling the truth. The 2 things Li Quanqing took out for trading were all good treasures, so naturally some people were tempted. A fat black tribesman said, I just bought a batch of stone loach fry and plan to use them to make beauty enhancing spirit mud. Do you want to trade? Stone loach? Li Quanqing was quite interested. This monster was discovered not long ago, and he had heard of its name. The strength of stone loach is not strong, and it only has the potential of the early stage of key refining, but if they grow for a long time, they can change their growth environment and cultivate a kind of beauty enhancing spirit mud. This kind of spiritual mud has the effect of whitening and nourishing the face, refining the skin, and lightening the pores. It is quite lethal to those female cultivators. Therefore, the price is high. What do you want to exchange? Li Quanqing was very tempted. How about 3 young spiritual loaches in exchange for 1 of your fry? The price was fair. Li Quanqing thought about it, and agreed to the transaction. Are there any other Taoist friends interested? Li Quanqing waved a few aquatic blue talismans in his hand. You can also buy it at a high price with spiritual stones. Someone suddenly said, I was lucky enough to get a young spiritual beast 2 days ago, but I don't like these things of yours. Do you have better treasures? Li Quanqing looked at the guy who spoke. He was a tall and thin man, about 24 or 25 years old, and he was also wearing a robe from the refining hall. His name was Li Quanqing, and his cultivation level was the 4th level of key training, the highest among all the people present. Although he didn't have any background, he was said to have a good talent for refining, so he spoke a little arrogantly. I wonder what kind of monster it is. It's an iron bone crab. Li Quanqing said, this monster feeds on iron ore. Its claws are very hard and can help refiners process ore. There is even a tiny chance that it will evolve into a copper armored crab. A gold attributed monster? Li Quanqing's eyes lit up immediately. Ever since he learned the Gengjin finger, his progress has been stuck at the entry level, and he is still a long way from achieving minor success. This ironbone crab is undoubtedly something he needs very much. Maybe it can give out the light ball reward of the Gengjin finger. Li Quanqing thought for a while and took out a jade slip. This is part of my ancestors' experience in refining the kingly sword. Do you think it's satisfactory? This is of course not a legacy left by the ancestors, but he just secretly stuffed it into the jade slip with only a few ideas. But it is more than enough to fool this guy who is not even a refiner. Sure enough, after seeing some of the words recorded in the jade slip, Li Quanqing was overjoyed. Let's change it to this. Neither of them brought the young spirit beasts with them, so they needed to trade after the peach blossom meeting was over. Li Quanqing was already very satisfied. Unexpectedly, Li Quanqing seemed to be very interested in the experience of refining equipment. I wonder if you want to exchange the Z family's iconic spirit beast, the moonlight shell, for the exchange? Li Quanqing thought of the beads she had taken out before, and had a guess. Could it be that the precious spirit beads are produced by these moonlight shells? That's right. Li Quanqing did not deny. This kind of spirit shell is precious and rare. The Z family generally does not take it out for trading. I still raised a few of them through my father's relationship. They can already produce precious pearls, and I'm willing to bear the pain and give them up. Li Quanqing frowned. Adult spirit shells? I wonder if there are any young shells? Li Quanqing was stunned for a moment and began to persuade. It often takes 3 or 4 years for shells to produce pearls. It is not worthwhile to raise them from young bodies. Li Quanqing insisted. My cultivation is low, so it is safer to start training from spirit beast cubs. Li Quanqing looked at the boy's cultivation level of the 3rd level of key refining and thought that this cousin was really cautious. I will contact my father. If there is any accurate information about the bright moon shell, I will inform my junior brother as soon as possible. Quanqing thanks you, senior sister. This small trading meeting lasted until the second half of the night, and Li Quanqing really gained some knowledge. However, his life has always been as plain as water. He has rarely left the family and can practice with cheats, so there is nothing that catches his eye. Early the next morning, the black and fat tribe member brought the young stone loach. As the name suggests, the loach really looks like a piece of shiny black stone, with earthy yellow patterns growing on the surface of its hard skin. Crawling in the dark, stone loach. Ah, that big fireball in the sky is so dazzling. I really want to return to the dark mud and continue crawling. Maturity 18%. Stubborn stone transformation. Stone loach. The life of a fish is so boring. I just want to become a motionless big stone and go with the flow. Maturity 16%. Li Quanqing touched these big loaches and felt relieved. The golden finger will not recognize the young spiritual beasts with a maturity of more than 50%. The tribesman looked at the half-dead stone spiritual loach and felt a little embarrassed. They explained, this kind of spiritual beast is very easy to raise. It only needs to be buried in the mud at the bottom of the fish pond, and it can grow slowly. It does not need to be fed at all, and it hates sunlight very much. As the stone spiritual loach grows up, it will slowly transform the living environment around it. This is how the beauty enhancing spiritual mud is prepared. It is very convenient not to need to feed. Li Quanqing replaced 12 large loaches in one breath, dived into the bottom of the fish pond, and buried them in the mud. These stone spiritual loaches seemed to have returned to their happy hometown. They rolled in the mud and almost wrapped themselves into mud balls. Then they lay there motionless, and even when they were pushed and played by the big black fish at the bottom of the water, they did not react. Li Quanqing had just settled the spiritual loach when Li Quanqing came and brought a basket of crab babies to trade with him. Chapter 14. The fourth level of key refining. Iron bones. Iron bones crab. Eat iron and swallow gold. The crab clan will never be slaves. Maturity 13%. The orange-sized iron blue crab was held in Li Quanqing's hand, with its 2 crab claws raised high, showing off its power. Snap. Snap. The little crab spit bubbles, rolled its eyes, waved its big black claws, and attacked the giant brazenly. How dare you pinch me? Li Quanqing was immediately amused, and the golden light on the surface of his fingers flickered, and he used the Gengjin finger to poke it directly. Although the iron bones crab was overturned to the ground, it was still indomitable, and its crab claws kept colliding with the golden light, making a crisp sound. This energetic little guy seemed to have no idea what giving up was. Snap. Snap. The remaining crab cubs saw their brothers being bullied, and they all pretended to attack, trying to climb out of the fish basket. Iron bones. Iron bones. Iron bones. Li Quanqing taught them a lesson one by one, but he didn't expect that all 23 iron bone crabs would display the same entry. This kind of spiritual beast is simply the other extreme compared to the gentle green jade carp. I heard that crab monsters are all like this, stubborn and hard-headed, and difficult to subdue. Li Quanqing also looked like he had a headache. Otherwise, he would not easily take out the crabs for trading. He took out a book. This is the secret of raising ironbone crabs that I found in the Sutra Pavilion. I will give it to my junior brother as a gift. Li Quanqing flipped through it. The ironbone crabs have a very mixed diet, eating plants, meat, soil, and everything. But if you want them to grow healthily and transform into monsters, you need to feed them a lot of iron ore. This is a big gold eater. Li Quanqing sighed secretly, but for the experienced group of Gengjin, this kind of gold monster is indispensable. Taking out the jade slip containing the experience of refining the green carp sword, the two completed the transaction. According to the character of the iron-boned crab, it will definitely cause trouble if it is kept with a school of fish. As long as they dare to wave their claws to provoke, the big black carp will definitely swallow these guys in one bite. It only takes a few water arrows to attack, and the iron-boned little crabs can go to see their grandmother peacefully. Li Quanqing manipulated the formation to isolate a corner of the fish pond for them to keep for the time being. The only pity is that there is no news about the bright moon shell. Time flies, the years are quiet, and nearly 4 months have passed in a blink of an eye. Li Quanqing went to the weapon refining hall to study for 4 hours every day, and then fed, fished, practiced, ate, and read. He meditated and rested in the fish pond almost every night. He really used the sky as a blanket and the sea as a bed. He hardly went back to his own cave. The days were more fulfilling than ever before. He did not hide his talent in weapon refining, and he was eager for vast knowledge like a sponge. All the teachers who taught him admired his diligence and talent. The water was rippling, the sea was blue, and Li Quanqing touched the cool sea water. His fingertips seemed to be touching flawless sapphires. After this period of feeding, all the big black carps have collectively entered the mature period. Harvest an adult big black carp and reward a low-grade water arrow talisman. Harvest an adult big black carp and reward 4 spiritual sands. Harvest an adult big black carp and reward a spiritual energy group. Harvest an adult big black carp and reward a water control experience group. Li Quanqing performed the water control technique and manner to move the big black carps out of the fish pond one by one. His movements were very rough. There was no need to carefully identify them. Each big fish had a shining white light group on its forehead. He had been busy for a day and a night, harvesting these sweet fruits that were exchanged for hard work. Just like an old farmer welcoming the arrival of autumn, he was shrouded in the satisfaction of a good harvest. One by one, water blue spiritual talismans appeared out of thin air and piled up in front of him into a thick pile of more than 400 pieces. The crystal clear spiritual sand was piled up on a separate lotus platform like a mound, glittering with colorful rays of light, which made the eyes of the people on the earth almost blind. There were more than 2,000 fish caught, which was too many. Just touching the light balls would make his arms sore. If other fishermen saw this scene, they would probably rush in with a knife to chop him with envy. Harvest an adult big black carp and reward a spiritual energy ball. Harvest an adult big black carp, and reward a spiritual energy ball. Several more spiritual energy balls were born one after another, and the speed was too fast. Li Quanqing didn't even have time to refine them. He manipulated the gaseous mana to rotate according to the records of the exercises, and the pores all over his body opened, spraying spiritual energy to the outside world. Crunch. When the danshan in his body was faintly making a sound of being overwhelmed, Li Quanqing knew that it was time to attack the invisible barrier. Pop! Exclamation mark. The mana surged, turning into ripples on the surface of the skin, rising and falling, causing the spiritual energy of the entire fish pond to change. The bottleneck that trapped countless cultivators in the early stage of key refining had long been overwhelmed by the pressure of waves of spiritual energy. The golden blue water power rushed through like a river, so smooth that it was incredible. It was too smooth, and there was no accident at all. A brand new route for the operation of the practice was opened up. Li Quanqing stepped into a new realm steadily, safely, and smoothly. The fourth level of key refining. Li Quanqing opened his eyes. His eyes were as bright as stars, and strands of spiritual light wrapped around his body, like smoke and fog, as if he was a fairy. Awesome. He felt that, even if he took precious elixir to break through the level, it would probably not be so smooth. The practice was fast and the foundation was stable. It took 2.5 years for me, Li Quanqing, to reach this level now, all thanks to my own efforts and talent. Harvest an adult big black carp, reward a spiritual energy ball. Li Quanqing rubbed the fish head and suddenly realized that the spiritual energy ball had less effect on him. When I break through to the late stage of key refining, or the perfect state, the light ball rewarded by the big blue carp may have little effect. Fortunately, in another half a year, this batch of green jade carp will mature, and there should be a large spiritual energy ball by then. We still need to raise more higher level monsters to get better light ball rewards. Li Quanqing began to count his gains: 487 water arrow talismans, 3795 spiritual sands, and dozens of experience balls for water control. Now, with a thought, Li Quanqing can control the surging water within 3 feet of his body, like watching the lines on the palm of his hand. Obviously, he has mastered this basic spell to perfection. Except for the breeding fish, there are 2024 mature big blue carps. I can exchange them for 20 spiritual stones in the Changqing Palace. With the reward, the total is 58 spiritual stones. Li Quanqing's eyebrows were happy, and his storage bag finally bulged again. Snap, snap. 2 iron bone crabs waved their big claws, rampant and domineering, and climbed out of the water onto the lotus platform. They have grown a lot now, bigger than the mouth of a bowl, and their bodies are shining with a sharp cold light, looking indestructible. Iron bones crab, I'm hungry, give me food. Otherwise, I'll ask my brothers to pinch you. Maturity 71%, Li Quanqing. These iron-headed crabs can be so confident when they ask for food. Ding ding. Li Quanqing took out a piece of heavy iron ore and smashed it on the back shell of the spirit crab, making a dang dang sound and splashing sparks. The iron-boned crab didn't care at all, letting him smash it and waving its claws to pinch the iron ore. Snap, snap. The crab claws collided with the ore, like scraping, and pieces of iron slag the size of soybeans were broken out, which were stuffed into the crab's mouth. One by one, the iron-boned crabs climbed up one after another, and stopped, only after eating 6 pieces of ore. Li Quanqing felt very painful. The food expenses of these crabs really cost him a lot of spirit stones. The ore is running low, so I'm going to the weapon forging hall to take the test, and get some money from my family. Spell proficiency, beginner. I've just learned it, and I can release it with some difficulty. It consumes a lot of mana, and is not suitable for actual combat. Minor success. After at least several years of practice, the casting process is smooth and silky, forming an instinct, and it can be used in combat. Great success. There is no need to pinch fingers or chant spells, and spells can be cast instantly and used at will. It requires decades of persistent practice and can be used as a killer for cultivators. Superb. Use your own mana to draw the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to bless spells. It consumes little and has great power. It requires a very strong talent for casting spells, which most people will never be able to achieve in their lifetime. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Forging Equipment Assessment. Weapon Refining Hall. Li Quanqing walked in the outermost area of the fire hall. The air was still scorching hot, but the clanging sound of iron was missing. He entered the forging hall, where 50 or 60 boys and girls stood nervously. They were his classmates. As early as 3 months ago, they had completed the assessment of the Yellow Level Academy, became Zuan level apprentices, and began to forge mortal weapons with their own hands. Today is the day of the assessment. If you don't pass, you need to continue to stay in the fire hall to learn iron making, and you may be scolded by those mortal weapon refining masters. Li Quanqing glanced around and saw a dozen old students in the corner who had been held back for 2 or 3 years. He found his forging platform and stood there. Next to him was Li Quanqing, who looked a little nervous. While checking his forging tools, Li Quanqing asked with concern, "Senior sister, have you got any accurate information about my bright moon shells? You kid, why are you asking this in such a serious occasion? Can you do whatever you want, just because you have talent?" Li Quanqing gritted her teeth. Even with her good temper, she was a little angry. What if I fail the exam? Then wait another half a year. I have only been studying in the weapon hall for a short time. It is normal to fail. Li Quanqing shrugged, looking nonchalant. The passing standard of the fire hall's assessment is to imitate the 2 magical instruments, the green carp sword and the green scale shield, and forge the instrument embryos 1 to 1. The difficulty is directly reduced by a large margin. With the brain and comprehension of a cultivator, as long as he has a little talent for refining instruments, he can pass it. After studying for a few months, Li Quanqing heard that she would no longer believe the words of this junior brother in front of her. Last time during the Yellow Level Apprentice assessment, this guy also had an indifferent attitude. It was said that he was still feeding fish the night before the exam and did not review at all. Then he easily won the first place in the school. She was really getting angrier and angrier the more she thought about it. Li Quanqing was a little confused when he saw the girl's face changing constantly. "My ancestors left me the experience of refining weapons. Don't you want it, senior sister?" Looking at that smiling handsome face, Li Quanqing resisted the urge to hit him and spat out a word from between his teeth. "Yes. Then I'll wait for news from senior sister." Li Quanqing nodded with satisfaction. He was still very interested in this kind of bright moon shell that could breed gems. Dung! Exclamation mark. The jade chime was struck, and the sound was ethereal and melodious. All the students sat up straight and dared not whisper anymore. The invigilator walked into the hall. It was Li Quanqing, who looked like a modest gentleman. He had led Li Quanqing to meet the third elder and looked elegant. "Good day, senior brother." Li Quanqing accepted the teacher's greeting openly and swept his majestic eyes over everyone. Each person will be given to spiritual materials as usual, and the examination time is unlimited. Anyone with bad intentions and the intention to deceive will be expelled from the weapon hall. Li Quanqing also stood solemnly at this time, reviewing the refining steps of the 2 magic weapons in his mind. Fortunately, he does have a great talent in refining weapons, plus the previous light ball reward. The advantage is mine. Dung, 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 dung. One by one, the mortal servants got busy and began to carry various spiritual materials for refining weapons for the candidates in an orderly manner. Some iron ores looked only the size of a palm, but they were very heavy and made a heavy sound when they fell on the stone platform. Li Quanqing touched them one by one, and his eyes suddenly lit up. First level middle grade Yang gold, like yin but actually yang, is formed by the fire yang gold being infected by the dark yin evil spirit, which has a miraculous effect on the growth of iron bone crabs. Li Quanqing has already figured out the function of the gold finger to identify objects. Only materials that are beneficial to the spiritual beasts he raises will show entry prompts. Yang gold, good stuff, but it is not used at all to refine the green carp sword and green scale shield. It seems to be used to deceive people. Li Quanqing smiled in his heart. It seems to be an assessment of forging ability, but in fact it also includes the basic knowledge of spiritual material identification that he has learned before. He was familiar with it and chose a sea heart copper for forging the green carp sword, and then pulled out a fish bone with green veins from the spiritual material. According to the orthodox refining technique, the sea heart copper mother and the spine of the green jade carp should be used with the help of spiritual fire to forge a sword embryo, and then the fish scales should be forged and fused. Now not only is the copper ore inferior, but even the fish bones used are only the spines of large green fish. They are not of the same grade at all. Just make do with it. Li Quanqing held his breath and concentrated, heated the copper block and the fish bone one after another, and then swung the hammer and hit it hard. Clang, clang, clang. For a while, the whole hall was resounding with the harsh sound of iron forging. Li Quanlin and the other two invigilators wandered around the hall from time to time. Occasionally their eyes met, and they all nodded silently. With a snort, the red sword embryo was inserted into the water for tempering, and white mist rolled up, as if the sea of clouds was steaming. Li Quanqing shook his wrist, and pulled out a cold and sharp sword from it, which was made of green scales. The blade was covered with fine serrations, and it rang without wind, and its sharpness was exposed. When it was swung, it was like a green dragon tumbling up and down in the water vapor. The vision was extraordinary. Although there were no spiritual patterns engraved on it, it was not even an inferior magic weapon, but it was definitely a peerless sword that could cut iron like mud in the secular world. Li Quanqing was also quite satisfied with his work. After swallowing 2 big pills, he took a short rest and began to forge the green scale shield. The shield was much larger than the sword in terms of volume, so the refining process was naturally more difficult. There are many kinds of ore materials, and the craftsmanship requires fine craftsmanship. The fish scales must be inlaid on the surface of the shield piece by piece at a special angle. In addition to its amazing defensive power, it can also be used as a saw blade when rotated, which can attack and defend. Li Quanqing spent 2 days and 1 night to finally forge it successfully. A sword and a shield are arranged side by side, with green light flashing and complementing each other, giving him an indescribable sense of accomplishment. Especially when he looked around and found that he was the first to pass the test. This sense of accomplishment reached its peak instantly. "You kid, you did a good job." Li Quanlin happened to turn here, picked up the 2 weapons, and admired them for a while, and whispered to encourage, "The test has passed, junior brother. Keep up the good work." Li Quanqing was overjoyed and relieved. Of course, what made him happiest was that those unused or spiritual materials belonged to him personally. This is free. Li Quanqing had nothing to do, and he couldn't leave, so he had to look around. Li Quanqiu next to him couldn't help but glared at him fiercely. Those beautiful autumn water eyes seemed to say, "Don't bother me." Li Quanqing grinned at his senior sister, shifted his gaze, and soon found his target. Cousin Li Quanqiu. This middle school boy has a medium grade fire spirit root, which is suitable for refining weapons. He is indeed proud of it. At this time, he has completed the creation of the green carp sword, and is carefully forging the green scale shield. As a cultivator, Li Quanqiu quickly realized that someone was spying on him. He took the time to look up and take a quick glance. After seeing who it was, his eyes were full of disgust. Li Quanqing smiled. His smile was pure and innocent, and his shiny white teeth conveyed full of kindness. Li Quanqiu wanted to ignore it, but the feeling of being on edge was really a torture, so he couldn't help but stare back. 1 eye, 2 eyes, 3 eyes. Bang! Exclamation mark. The green scale shield embryo was heated unevenly and was suddenly hit by an external force. It exploded and broke into pieces. This unlucky child, his skills are still not up to standard. Is it difficult to forge this thing? Li Quanqing calmly withdrew his gaze, mainly because of the warning look from Li Quanlin. He had to give face to his senior brother. Because he was too bored, Li Quanqing suddenly had an idea and wanted to try to forge a piece of green jade armor, named after the Li family's green jade. This kind of spiritual armor is precious. Each piece is a real top-grade magic weapon. After wearing it, it is enough to be invincible in key refining. Even from those refining books, Li Quanqing vaguely speculated that magic weapons are not the limit of green jade armor. If the materials are precious and the weapon master has superb skills, he can even create a green jade armor at the level of spiritual weapons. Spiritual weapons breed a trace of spirituality. This is exclusive to the great monks of foundation building, far beyond the top grade magic weapons, and amazing power. Therefore, the structure of the green jade armor is extremely complicated. Even if only these low-level materials are used to create a replica of the level of mortal weapons, the difficulty is also terrifying. Li Quanqing had nothing to do anyway, so he simply swung the hammer and started working. Chapter 16 Promise. Done! Exclamation mark. In the center of the fire hall, the jade chime rang again, and the bell sound echoed, marking the official end of this assessment. The sound waves entered his ears, and it was endless. Li Quanqing looked up in a daze, and then he realized that all the clansmen had completed their own works. Some were happy, and some were sad. He looked at the forging table in front of him, and a piece of armor lay quietly on it, made up of thousands of cherry-sized green scales stacked layer by layer, blooming like a lotus. The firelight shone, and the jade armor was natural and beautiful like a work of art. Unfortunately, this green jade armor is far from complete. There are no arms or lower body, and it can only be called an iron armor vest. True immortal. Junior brother, you are really free. Li Quanqing next to him was stunned, looking up and down at the boy, as if looking at a monster. It's too difficult. Don't try this thing easily, before you become a weapon refiner. Li Quanqing rubbed his temples. At this time, his mind was pulled out of the state of concentration, and he felt dizzy and stars in his eyes. Obviously, the spiritual consciousness consumption is quite large. This set of armor looks delicate and small, but it is actually composed of 3 layers of scales, and the design is ingenious. But Li Quanqing is not very satisfied. The real top-grade magic weapon Qingyu armor is made of 9 layers of scales, and the spiritual patterns must be outlined on the surface of the scales. The difficulty can be said to be geometrically increased. The spell bombarded the surface of Qingyu armor, which is equivalent to being weakened by 9 layers, and finally fell on the body without feeling at all. Invincible defense. The art of refining is profound. Li Quanqing sighed lightly, and the pride in his heart quietly disappeared. Silence. Now announce those who have passed this assessment. Li Quanqing started from the first refining table, and tested the weapons refined by the students one by one. He picked up a sword and a shield, and chopped them hard. How heavy and how good the weight was, whether the sound was crisp, and in a moment he knew what the forging level was. Some kingly swords look gorgeous on the outside, but they only need to be swung hard, and the blade will crack by itself, which is obviously a shoddy job. Li Quanlu, the result is B. The assessment is passed. Li Quanqing, the forging is not completed, the assessment is failed. Li Quanqing, the result is A. The assessment is passed. This is the best result so far, and everyone can't help but look at it. Then they saw the semi-finished jade armor, and for a moment, everyone was in a complicated mood, secretly cursing the monster. Senior brother Li Quanqing stroked the jade armor, and there was also some admiration in his eyes. It was obviously a copper and iron forged armor, but it was as smooth and flawless as a gem. This is already the skill of a weapon refiner. He checked the weapon of Li Quanqing next to him, and after testing it, he gave it a grade of B. The big stone in the girl's heart fell to the ground instantly, and her frowning eyebrows stretched out, and the whole person was relieved. There are more than 60 people in the whole hall, and only 1/3 passed the assessment. Some of them have reached the technical level, but unfortunately their character is not up to standard, and they failed to perform perfectly and failed miserably. For example, Li Quanqing, this miserable boy. When the results were announced as unsatisfactory, the brat immediately lost his temper, his face gloomy and red as a pig's liver. Fortunately, he still had a trace of rationality, and did not talk back to the invigilator. He just threw the 2 weapons to the ground, stomped on them a few times, and left in anger. After all, he is a young man. If his character is not up to standard, he should practice more. Li Quanqing touched his chin, and would definitely not admit that he was to blame. Your cousin has not had a good time recently. Li Quanqing blinked, and kept her voice between the 2 of them. Oh. Senior sister, tell me in detail. Li Quanqing immediately became interested. When it comes to finding out gossip and intelligence, women are naturally more advantageous than men. Your uncle had used his connections to get promoted to the family steward, but he was replaced by someone else when he was about to take office. I heard from the sisters in the clan that Kingpin Island has been very lively recently. Your uncle has been making trouble in the clan elder's cave every day, asking for an explanation. Li Quanqing couldn't help but sigh. He had been living and eating in the fish pond these days, and he missed the excitement invisibly. I wonder who has taken this position? Li Quanqing was quite curious. Li Yuheng has a good cultivation level and made a fortune in the ancient cave. In addition, his aunt's family has connections and uses spiritual stones to pave the way. This steward position should be a foregone conclusion. Senior sister, I just heard it from someone. Junior brother, don't spread it around. Li Quanqiu looked righteous. After looking around, he quietly uttered a name, the main vein, Li Quanqing. It turned out to be this young master. No wonder. Li Quanqing was amazed, even though he has always been obsessed with fish farming and not good at socializing. This name is still well known. Li Quanqing, the only one with a top-grade spiritual root in the Quan generation. His great-grandfather was the patriarch of the Li family, the great foundation-building cultivator Li Zhangjiao, with a distinguished background. He can be called the most direct of the direct lineage. He is known as the leader of the younger generation of the Li family, and a solid foundation-building seed. The gap between people is really too big. I heard that Li Quanqing is only in his 20s this year, but he has already reached the 7th level of key refining. The girl twisted her hair hanging by her ears and couldn't help but sigh softly. Not only is her spiritual root of low quality, but she also has water and fire spiritual roots with conflicting attributes. Now she is stuck in the bottleneck of the 3rd level of key refining for nearly a year and can only slowly grind it out. Li Quanqing was embarrassed to say that he had already reached the 4th level of key refining. According to the speed of cultivation, it is not much slower than Li Quanqing back then. While the two were talking, the assessment had ended, and the clansmen walked out of the hall one after another. Li Quanqing couldn't wait to put the ores into the storage bag, and was about to return to the fish pond, when he was suddenly stopped by his senior brother. Quanqing, come and help. Li Quanlin waved at him. Carry all these successfully refined weapons to the back hall. Li Quanqiu had just packed up his things and immediately showed an envious expression when he saw this. Okay, senior brother. Li Quanqing ran errands diligently and shuttled through the hall. The kingly sword is small in size and can be put into the storage bag in large quantities, but the kinglin shield is too big and can only be carried manually. During this process, Li Quanqing also found some fallen ores, which he happily collected. In the back hall, weapons were moved to the shelves, flashing with cold light and murderous aura. After all, these mortal weapons contain spiritual energy and will be taken away by the Dharma Hall to provide those weapon refiners with practice. Although they can only be refined into inferior magic weapons and sold to those downtrodden cultivators, they are also worth a lot of spiritual stones. Li Quanqing heard this and suddenly realized it. The family really never loses money. Presumably, those weapons that failed to be refined also have special people to melt and recycle them. Li Quanlin picked up Li Quanqing's work and looked at the boy. You are about to enter the Earth Level Academy. Do you know what you will learn? The origin of the magic ban, the engraving of spiritual patterns, the identification of magic weapons. Li Quanqing counted on his fingers and listed them one by one. The study and forging in the previous few months were just laying the foundation. At this step, it is the real core of the inheritance of refining. As for the guys in the Heaven Level Academy, they have learned all the knowledge. They only need to refine a low-grade magic weapon by themselves to become a distinguished refiner recognized by the family. Similarly, the Heaven Level Academy also has the most repeaters, and there are many old guys who have studied for decades. Li Quanlin nodded with satisfaction and suddenly said, I'm going to forge your 2 weapons into magic weapons. If you can continue to get the first place in the Earth Level assessment, I promise to let you assist in refining. How about it? Li Quanqing was overjoyed when he heard this. Li Quanlin was already a first level middle grade refiner at a young age. He was gifted and was quite favored by the 3 elders in the weapon hall. Assisting him in refining 2 magical instruments is a dream come true for any apprentice in the weapon hall. Although Li Quanqing is quite confident that he can refine a low-grade kingly sword by himself, he dare not show it. To become a weapon refiner in half a year, this talent is too monstrous. He is afraid that the enemies of the Li family will record it in the assassination notebook. It is better to be a little more surviving. The strength is not enough for the time being, and it is good to be an ordinary genius. A stable life, enjoying the happy life of raising fish, isn't it good? Chapter 17 Green Carp Sword. Thank you, senior brother. In the face of his senior brother's promise, Li Quanqing bowed sincerely. The other party extended an olive branch because he saw his potential and wanted to invest. Li Quanqing was also happy about it. The backer behind Li Quanlin is Li Kunli, the head of the weapon hall, and his life is quite comfortable. When he becomes a lower grade weapon refiner, this backer will be his. If you want to go further in the family, you can't do it without someone behind you. Li Quanlin helped his junior brother up, and after looking at him for a few times, his smile became more intimate. I was not sure just now, but now I realize that junior brother has reached the 4th level of key refining. Li Quanqing was very modest. I broke through by luck. I can't compare with senior brother. I'm not flattering you, senior brother. I'm 12 years older than you, and now I'm only at the 5th level of key refining. Li Quanlin is obsessed with weapon refining, so his cultivation speed is not fast. I remember that you are not even 17 years old yet. No wonder you are valued by the Hall Master. You have the potential to build your foundation. Li Quanlin took out a token from his storage bag. As a disciple of the weapon hall, you should be treated specially. Take this token and go to the treasury to get a kingly sword as a gift for breaking through the middle stage of key refining. Ah, is the treatment in our weapon hall so good? Li Quanqing was a little surprised. The kingly sword is not a common item. It is a real medium grade magic weapon. The price of flying swords is always high. The price is clearly marked in the Bao King Fang market. 88 low grade spirit stones. Others naturally don't have such treatment, but as a genius, should I be treated the same as those mediocre talents? Li Quanlin blinked and smiled knowingly. After receiving the token, Li Quanqing couldn't wait to say goodbye and go to the treasure house of the weapon hall. In the northeast corner of the weapon refining hall, a towering iron tower stands, dozens of feet tall, with iron locks wrapped around the tower body and reliefs of thousands of soldiers, echoing the kingly volcano in the distance. It is said that the weapon hall originally did not have a dedicated treasury, and all the magic weapons refined by the family weapon refiners had to be handed over to the family treasury. Later, Li Kunli took over as the hall master and had a friendly discussion with several family elders. He forcibly moved this weapon storage tower here. There is no way who lets him have a brother in the foundation building realm. As soon as Li Quanqing stepped into this place, he was immediately hit by a sharp breath, as if he heard the sound of thousands of swords, and his skin hurt. The colorful array patterns flowed, spread throughout the void, covering every space, making it difficult to move. Li Quanqing quickly took out the token, and inexplicable fluctuations bloomed, and a narrow road suddenly appeared in front of him. He walked forward carefully and successfully came to the bottom of the iron tower. The tower is 49 stories high, magnificent, and ancient, majestic, and you can't see the end at a glance. The Zuan leveled decree can receive mid-grade magic weapon. The azure glow surged, transforming into an illusory jade carp, covered in golden scales, with a prominent head and horns, and its fins spread out like wings. The carp swallowed the token in one gulp, and led the way in front of it. There were spots of light behind it, looking a little dull. Weapon spirit? Or formation spirit? Li Quanqing hurriedly followed behind, very curious. He was more inclined to the latter. After all, the entire Qingyu Island was covered by the clan protection formation, and this was undoubtedly an important formation node. The jade carp phantom tapped its tail, and the formation covering the tower suddenly rumbled open, revealing a glowing portal. Li Quanqing stepped into the iron tower, and was once again amazed by the profound heritage of the Li family. There were no candles or lights in the tower, but it was not dark. Various precious lights shone together, making people's heartbeats accelerate. There were hundreds of low-grade magic weapons, placed in the center of the lotus stone platforms, and the formations intertwined to form a light shield that was difficult to touch. Li Quanqing walked in the tower, and the sound of his footsteps echoed, showing how empty it was. The spiritual energy here is really poor. No wonder there are no cultivators to take care of it. It's obviously not conducive to cultivation. He looked at the cover covering the lotus stone platform. All the spiritual energy was extracted by the formation to nourish these magic tools. This weapon storage tower can be called the Li family's weapon library, showing the heritage of a 1,000-year-old family of immortal cultivation. Li Quanqing followed the green jade carp swimming in the void, and crossed the 12 floors of the tower one after another, and then arrived at the place where the middle grade magic tools were placed. The most types were naturally the green carp swords, which were a bit confusing. After careful discovery before, Li Quanqing noticed that, although the grades were the same, the higher the floor, the better the quality of the magic tools. He tried to continue climbing the tower, but was stopped at the 15th floor. The formations intertwined and sealed the entrance to the 16th floor. The light flashed, revealing an extremely dangerous atmosphere. Li Quanqing looked at the stunned green jade carp phantom. The other party ignored him at all, and did not open the formation for him to pass as before. Okay, people should be content. Li Quanqing looked at the middle grade magic tools stored on the 15th floor. About 1/5 of the lotus stone platform has been vacant. I wonder if the treasure has been taken away. Take the kingly sword, or choose another style of magic tool. Li Quanqing was entangled. He saw a set of cold needles, as thin as hair, with a cold breath. Definitely a yin-yang weapon, and it is hard to defend against. The heavy water halberd is not bad, with great power and extraordinary might. There are also fish skin drums surrounded by lightning, water repellent armor made of dark blue tortoise shells, and flying escape devices made of smoke and clouds. He drooled at the sight of all of them. But in the end, Li Quanqing wiped the corners of his mouth, and prepared to choose a kingly sword. Isn't this treasure selection a test for him by his senior brother? Having a kingly sword as a reference, and accompanying him day and night is undoubtedly of great benefit to the apprentice of refining tools. Li Quanqing chose a kingly sword with golden patterns. This was made of fish scales of a species with golden patterns, which was a bit of a waste of materials, but it was very pleasing to the eye. Most importantly, Li Quanqing noticed that there was still some angle left on this flying sword. Obviously, this was a newly refined magic weapon in the last few decades, and it had not seen blood yet, so it was probably not a second-hand product. Li Quanqing called out to the array spirit, and this guy finally responded. The green jade carp slowly swam to the front of the lotus platform, then crashed into it, and perished together with the light shield intertwined with the array patterns, turning into light spots all over the sky and dissipating. Why do I feel so tragic? Li Quanqing looked strange. The spiritual energy dispersed, and a green flying sword emerged, more than 2 feet long, surrounded by golden clouds, as if it was carved from jade. Li Quanqing tried to lift the green carp sword, and his wrist suddenly sank, weighing at least 70 to 80 kilograms, which was quite amazing. Flying sword, rise. Li Quanqing moved his magic power to infuse the sword body, successfully imprinted it with the breath, and reached out to wipe it. The kingly sword suddenly flew up, swaying, and flew around him up and down, becoming more and more stable, as fast as a meteor. Li Quanqing was quite satisfied with this. Even if he didn't know any sword techniques, the weight and hardness alone could have the power of a howitzer. Low-level flying swords are like this. Under the premise of ensuring speed, heavy is good, and hard is strong. No matter what kind of spells, talismans, shields and spiritual armor you have, I can smash you to death with a sword. As for the so-called free and easy sword flying, the sword energy is like a rainbow. The sword light turns into silk, and the enemy's head is taken from 1,000 miles away. That is not something that a key refining cultivator should consider. You can't even achieve the unity of man and sword, and you still want to fly with a sword? Just drive a flying magic weapon. Chapter 18, Green Spirit Mud. Quanqing Palace, Spirit Fish Side Hall. Young man, you're here to sell fish again after half a year? The elder who looked familiar stroked his grey beard and smiled until his eyes narrowed. Is that the kingly sword on your back? Not bad, not bad. It has quite a bit of the style of a swordsman I used to practice. Li Quanqing touched the sword behind him and raised his eyebrows proudly. Your eyesight is really good. I just bought a magic weapon and I sleep with it, ready to cultivate an invincible sword heart. Hey, where did this nephew make his fortune? The sword energy is vigorous and unstoppable. I seem to see the rise of a peerless swordsman. Did you see, my dear granddaughter, grandpa didn't lie to you. You can save enough spirit stones to buy a flying sword as a fisherman. For a while, the air with the smell of fish was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. Magic weapons have a period of running in, and they need to be close to the body to be sacrificed with magic power before they can be manipulated like an arm. It is definitely not that Li deliberately showed off. After selling the big black carp, another 20.24 spiritual stones were credited to his account. In Li Quanqing's eyes, those white and plump spiritual sand and spiritual stones were the cutest things in the world. In the Yulangtan market, Li Quanqing walked into the shop he often visited and bought tens of thousands of pounds of bait, which was delivered by a special person. Walking along the emerald pond, seeing that there was no one around, Li Quanqing dived into the water. The water in the pond was dark green and freezing cold. Even if he had magic power to protect his whole body, he couldn't stay there for long. Li Quanqing took out a shovel and skillfully dived into the water to dig. The silt was dark green in color, as sticky as black oil, and mixed with fine ice chips. Green spirit mud, a treasure fermented for hundreds of years, stained with the breath of a high-level monster. Long-term contact is beneficial to the growth of stone loach and green jade carp. This is the secret that Li Quanqing saw in a book, Secrets of Fish Farming in the Sutra Pavilion. After verification by the Golden Finger, it is indeed quite beneficial to spiritual fish. High-level demon beast. Is there really a guardian spirit beast in the depths of Yulong Lake? Li Quanqing dug 7 or 8 bags of spirit mud before he surfaced for air. All the Li family members had heard the story of the guardian spirit beast when they were young. He looked into the depths of the lake. The mist was vast and boundless, and he wondered if there was really a huge beast silently guarding Qingyu Island. Fish cubs, it's time to eat. Li Quanqing floated on the water, stepping on the lotus platform, carrying a long sword on his back, wearing a green robe with large sleeves fluttering, looking ethereal like a fairy, free and happy. In fact, he was just a canteen spoon flipping boy in charge of fish bait. Ordinary. He spread handfuls of bait, smelling sour and pungent, but it was extremely tempting to the fish. Splash. In a corner of the fish pond separated by the formation, densely packed big black carp fry surfaced, all of which had just hatched not long ago, snuggling around their parents. Moo. The jade carps smelled the aroma and poked their heads out one after another, opening their mouths wide as if swallowing saliva. After half a year of cultivation, there were only 20 young jade carps left, and it was time for them to grow. Each of them was very hungry, with a big appetite, and grew up round and smooth, with clear stupidity in their eyes. Come here, let me touch you, and see how you are growing. Li Quanqing performed the water control technique, which was superb, and easily caught the spirit fish. Thinking about fish life, jade carp, eat or sleep, this is a question. Maturity. 66%. Li Quanqing, I think you look more like a question. Water-based fish flower, jade carp, you actually snatched food from me when he was eating in the morning, but you was the most considerate and gave me all the food. But brother, you were so great last night. Maturity. 71%. Li Quanqing, it's broken. I'm not clean anymore. Sashimi jade carp, I took a nap, and sister Yuhua actually wanted to touch me. Damn it, eating is not as important as eating for female fish. Maturity. 67%. Pure bloodline, just like your father. No hope, let's start over. Li Quanqing touched them all and couldn't help but sighed to the sky. This group of jade carp really made him worry. Fortunately, after raising them for so long, there is finally a reliable one. I want to turn into a dragon. Jade carp, turn into a dragon. Turn into a dragon. Turn into a dragon. Maturity. 69%. Li Quanqing couldn't help but smile. This jade carp is the one with the most potential in the fish pond. From the first day of birth, the only thought was to turn into a dragon, a natural king of fish. The carp's head was held high, and its eyes seemed to be burning with flames. The fish body was slender and strong, and golden spots had already grown faintly on its scales. Very good. Very energetic. Li Quanqing rubbed the fish head with satisfaction, took out the spirit earthworm bait pills to feed the jade carp, and then looked at the remaining fish. This is how they treated each other so openly. Hey, come and eat. A large amount of spiritual bait fell from the sky. Naturally, the spiritual fishes did not understand human words and ate it with gusto. Snap, snap. Under the water, the iron-bone crab quietly showed its eyes, and its claws paddled and paddled, stirring the water waves, making the spiritual bait float in its direction. Pa. The dragon-transforming green jade carp had excellent eyesight and was the first to notice the small movement and opened its mouth to spit out water arrows. Crash. As if poking a hornet's nest, all the green jade carps instantly rioted, and water arrows were fired at the same time, hitting the water surface with a snapping sound like rain hitting banana leaves. In an instant, this hungry iron-bone crab was hit by the waves and was dizzy, with stars in its eyes. Snap, snap. It struggled in the waves, waving its large claws to clamp and clamp, making a very unique sound, calling its little friends. One after another, the iron-bone crab swam up, stepping on the waves, and showing their teeth and claws, rampant and domineering, and began to snatch food. The spirit fish and crabs gathered in a group, facing each other across the lotus platform, like two armies facing each other, shouting non-stop. Although Li Quanqing didn't understand, he felt that they must be cursing very dirty. Since losing the formation barrier, the green jade carp and the iron-bone crab have been fighting every now and then. This is the nature of the monsters, dividing territories, excluding aliens, and gathering together for warmth. Li Quanqing did not stop it, but instead fanned the flames behind the scenes. These little guys are at the age of youth and vigor, just right to vent their anger, which is beneficial to physical and mental health, so as to avoid killing each other among the same race. Moreover, proper competition can also stimulate their sense of crisis, make them more motivated to practice, and enter the mature stage sooner. Li Quanqing can harvest the light group rewards more easily. When the fish and crabs were tired, he slowly took out enough bait to feed them. Iron bones crab, damn it, I didn't do well in the verbal battle just now. Let's review it tonight. Maturity. 86%. Li Quanqing used iron ore to tease the big crabs and found out their development situation. In 4 or 5 months, this batch of iron bones crabs will be mature and enter the early stage of key refining. It can be seen that the potential of this monster is not as high as that of the jade carp. It is estimated that it is difficult to break through the 3rd level of key refining. The level of the monster race is determined by bloodline. The older and nobler the bloodline, the longer it takes to develop. Like the male jade carp before, the bloodline reverts to its ancestral lineage. The golden pattern is a different species, and it has the potential to break through the late stage of key refining, or even the great perfection. The development speed is much slower than that of the female jade carp. However, compared with the iron bones crab, the potential of the stone spirit loach is even worse. Li Quanqing took out the kingling mud he dug, surrounded his body with a kingly sword, and carefully dived to the bottom of the fish pond. The dim light fell from the top of his head, and pieces of earth mounds rose at the bottom of the pond, almost merging with the seabed. No one could have imagined that the stone loaches lived in those mounds, wrapped their bodies in mud shells, and did not eat or drink for several months. Like insect eggs trapped in silk cocoons, they silently accumulated strength and waited for the day when they would break out of the cocoon and become butterflies. In Li Quanqing's unique vision, wisps of white light bloomed from the mounds, which was a symbol of the light ball slowly taking shape. He evenly covered it with kingling mud and waited until nightfall. The special substances contained in the mud were finally slowly absorbed by the spirit loaches, and the white light became stronger and stronger. Finally, completely formed. Chapter 19. Stone Spirit Seal. Wisps of white light bloomed, suddenly shining brightly, but finally dissipated and returned to normal. Li Quanqing knew that this was a symbol of the complete formation of the light ball. In a short period of time, 4 stone spirit loaches entered the realm of key refining. Some demonic energy leaked out through the mud, revealing a unique wild breath. Li Quanqing looked at the motionless mound and hesitated slightly. When the light ball appeared, it would stick to the skin on the forehead of the monster. He was wondering whether to use external force to break the mud layer so that he could touch the light ball. Fortunately, the next second, the stone spirit loaches struggled to get out by themselves. Crack. Cracks bloomed one after another, penetrating the mound from the inside out. Finally, it exploded with a bang. The mud surged, the mud broke into pieces, and a big loach drilled out. After the stone spirit loach became a monster, its black body became bigger, agile and powerful, and it looked like a delicious tonic for the bones and muscles. On the surface of its skin, the khaki pattern condensed into a circle, like a stone ring on its tail, with a hard and rough texture. A piece of mud shell fragment floated in front of him, and Li Quanqing reached out and touched it. Over time, the mud that wrapped the body of the spiritual loach was soaked with spiritual energy, and became harder than stone. After being mixed with some alchemy techniques, it became the famous beauty-enhancing spiritual mud. Bang, bang, bang. The other 3 stone spiritual loaches were born soon after, and they gathered together, and gurgled and spit out bubbles, as if they were communicating their feelings. Li Quanqing looked at the glittering white ball, and took out a bag of green spiritual mud with anticipation, tempting the big loaches to come closer. The stone spiritual loaches really couldn't resist the temptation of the spiritual mud, and couldn't wait to swim over and drill into the black mud. Harvest a stone spiritual loach in the early stage of key refining, and reward a gourd of beauty enhancing spiritual mud. Harvest a stone spiritual loach in the early stage of key refining, and reward 10 low-grade talisman stone falling talismans. Harvest a stone loach in the early stage of key refining, and reward a gourd of beauty enhancing spiritual mud. Harvest a stone loach in the early stage of key refining, and reward a medium grade magical stone spiritual seal. One after another, the light balls exploded like fireworks, turning into a dazzling array of rewards. Because he was underwater, Li Quanqing only took a quick look, and put them into his storage bag. Sleepy stone loach, I had a very long dream, now I continue to have another beautiful dream. Cultivation. Key refining level 1, 1%. The big loaches were covered with mud and drilled to the bottom of the fish pond again, crawling in the dark or sleeping soundly. They were really easy to feed. Li Quanqing saw that the other spiritual loaches showed no signs of maturity, so he took away the broken mud shells and swam upwards. The bright moon was hanging high in the sky, like a layer of silver gauze covering the water surface. The tides rose and fell, and the sound of waves continued. Li Quanqing sat cross-legged on the lotus platform, counting his harvest with the help of the cold moonlight. 2 portions of beauty-enhancing spiritual mud were already prepared, and put in an ordinary big-bellied yellow gourd. He poured out a ball of spiritual mud the size of a fingertip, which was actually white, with a very delicate texture. It was transparent and flawless under the moonlight, and had a faint fragrance. It smelled very high-end. Not bad. I'll give one to my aunt tomorrow, and use the rest of the gourd myself. Li Quanqing happily put it away. 10 pieces of the falling rock talisman can summon a large rock to fall from the sky, which is quite powerful. Even if a cultivator in the middle stage of key refining has not practiced physical training, he will be hit on the head and bleed if caught off guard. This is also a good thing. Put it in a separate storage bag with the water arrow talisman, so that you can use the spiritual talisman to hit people when you have the chance. Finally, the highlight is the middle grade magic weapon, the stone spirit seal. A small seal the size of a walnut, like a yellow jade carving, with dragon loach patterns engraved on the 4 corners of the seal, wrapped around the 2 ancient characters of stone spirit in a circle. Li Quanqing injected a stream of magic power, and a message instantly came out of the magic weapon. Stone Spirit Seal, a medium-grade magic weapon, carved from yellow jade. It can control the transformation of the earth's mud and rocks, and has 2 magic spells, turning mud into stone, and turning rocks into mud. Li Quanqing's eyes were filled with surprise. Just based on these 2 magics, it can be called a fine product among the medium-grade magic weapons. He played with the warm little seal. Under the moonlight, the mountain pattern could be vaguely seen inside the translucent seal, which was quite strange. Go and try the power of this magic weapon. Li Quanqing dived into the water. Only mud and rocks could be found at the bottom of the fish pond. But! Exclamation mark. The magic power was entangled, and the stone spirit seal spun around, hanging above his head, and dropping a yellow haze. Li Quanqing's mind moved slightly, and all the mud and earth covered by the yellow haze had a feeling of being under control. Stone spikes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The mud was surging, and 7 or 8 bamboo shoot-shaped spikes quickly rose. Under the shining yellow glow, the soft soil turned into sharp stalagmites, rising from the ground, interlaced, stirring bubbles up. Li Quanqing couldn't help but nod, very satisfied with the effect. Fossils into mud. Another yellow light fell, and the stalagmites rustled, turning into sand that was even finer than before and falling down. What a treasure. It is very suitable for transforming the terrain and reshaping the fish pond. Li Quanqing simply couldn't let it go. It was obviously an offensive magic weapon, but he was thinking about how to use it better and raise fish. Li Quanqing swam around the bottom of the fish pond, and all the ugly stones that he didn't like were turned into mud and yellow sand. The seabed instantly became much flatter. In the end, there were dozens of super large sea stones left, which he glued into a stone reef that was undulating and protruding from the water. The reef was hollow inside, creating dense caves, which were used as the nest of ironbone crabs, to enrich the ecological environment of the fish pond. Li Quanqing manipulated the stone spirit seal, feeling a sense of joy similar to the previous life, when he raised fish, and opened a tank to create terrain. He had a lot of fun. In the next half month, 12 stone spirit loaches matured one after another, and they were all falling stone talismans. When the last few big loaches were harvested, a new reward finally appeared. Harvest a stone spirit loach in the early stage of key refining, and reward 3 stone skin pills. Stone skin pills, body refining spirit pills, dissolved in spring water, applied to the body surface, can temper the skin to be as hard as stone. Li Quanqing held 3 stone black pills, and didn't expect there was such a good thing. You don't need to suffer hardships, and you can strengthen your body by tempering your muscles and bones. It's very suitable for a lazy guy like me. He couldn't wait to get the spring water in the wooden barrel, throw the stone skin pills in, and dissolve them with magic power. The pills, the size of langan, turned into black jade-like sticky spiritual mud in the water, and the large number overflowed from the wooden barrel. It can be used for a long time. Let's try it and see how it works. Since there were not many people in the fish pond, Li Quanqing took off his clothes and covered his whole body with thick black mud. The scent of medicine mixed with the fishy smell penetrated into his nose. At first, his skin felt very cool, like a cool autumn breeze. After a cup of tea, this cool feeling disappeared, replaced by a burning sensation. The overbearing medicinal power began to penetrate the skin, as if it had been tempered by thousands of hammers, and it was burning hot, but fortunately it was still bearable. 2 hours later, the black jade spiritual mud faded, and turned into a grayish white like plaster, without a trace of spiritual energy. Crack. Li Quanqing shattered the mud shell, as if he had drilled out of a stone statue, and dust fell. He rubbed his body and actually rubbed off a layer of dead skin. The new skin was tough and strong, with a warm feeling like jade. It feels good. Li Quanqing swam a circle in the fish pond to wash off the filth, and just like that, he rose and fell with the waves, absorbing spiritual energy and entering the state of cultivation. Chapter 20 Birthday. 2 months later. The moon was hanging high in the sky, a galaxy was hanging down, and billions of stars were shining against each other, brilliant and vast. Today seems to be my 17th birthday. Li Quanqing sat on the reef of the fish pond. After a busy day, he suddenly remembered his birthday. But except for him, I'm afraid no one else remembered it. The moonlight poured down like silver, the sea surface was sparkling, the tide was rising and falling, reflecting the lonely back of the boy. Snap, snap. Inside the reef, an iron bone crab poked its head out, waving its claws towards him, its eyes rolling. Crab, are you hungry? Li Quanqing reached out to tease it, and the crab claws clamped on his finger, leaving no white marks. After being strengthened by the stone skin pill, in terms of skin hardness alone, he is no less than the body refining cultivators in the early stage of key refining. Dada. Dada. More and more iron bone crabs crawled out, their pointed crab feet hitting the surface of the reef with rhythmic crisp sounds. Li Quanqing took out the ore to feed them, cold iron, red copper, silver essence, gold crystal, and many other kinds. During this period, he studied in the weapon refining hall and got a lot of money so that these big crabs could change their tastes and eat snacks. Crash. The waves were rippling and the green jade carps floated out of the sea one after another. The reefs were surrounded by a large number of fish. They didn't want to eat supper, but collectively swallowed and exhaled the moonlight to practice. Led by the dragon transforming green jade carp, thousands of big bluefish looked at the moon and worshipped at the same time, and their scales covered the fish pond, which was a spectacular scene. They opened their mouths wide and kept swallowing and exhaling, taking in the moonlight of the moon, refining it into demonic energy to strengthen themselves. Buzz! Exclamation mark. I don't know if it was an illusion, but Li Quanqing felt that the bright moon above his head was indeed a little brighter. The silver light fell like a veil and mist, revealing a holy haze covering the sea. An inexplicable breath flowed, peaceful and harmonious, soothing the distracting thoughts and ripples in the hearts of living beings. Snap, snap. Some of the iron-bone crabs could not sit still and collectively jumped from the reef into the sea. The moonlight was too tempting for the monsters. They crawled through the water and waded through the waves, acting arrogantly, stepping on the scales and bodies of the big black fish to drill into the innermost part, bathing in the moonlight and absorbing spiritual energy. Some stubborn big black fish spit at the iron-bone crabs angrily and then were beaten by the crab claws, and they no longer had any temper. The green jade carps looked at them for a few times and were too lazy to pay attention to this group of iron-bone crabs. Li Quanqing also closed his eyes, moved his skills, and the spiritual energy drilled into his body along with his breathing, cool as rain. When he was illuminated by the moonlight, there were no distracting thoughts in his mind. It was a good time to practice. Crash, crash. The waves were endless, the tides rose and fell, and the boy practiced with the monsters. The scene was like a dream, beautiful like an illusory fairyland. When Li Quanqing opened his eyes again, it was already dawn. At the end of the vast sea, a fiery red sun jumped out, dispelling the darkness, and the brilliant golden light illuminated the entire East China Sea. Purple hair came from the east, majestic and powerful. An iron-bone crab rose and fell in the waves, and climbed up the reef along the waves, with white airflow all over its body. After rubbing the Tai in spiritual energy for a night, it finally stepped into the early stage of ki refining and became an adult iron-bone crab. Finally, a soft colored light ball formed on the crab's forehead. Is this my birthday present? Li Quanqing couldn't help laughing, and his magic power dried the morning dew condensed on his body, and he reached out to grab the spirit crab, harvest an iron-bone crab in the early stage of ki refining, and reward a Gengjin finger experience. A large group of experience emerged in his mind, as if he had practiced this spell thousands of times, and was very familiar with it. Whoosh! Exclamation mark. Li Quanqing stretched out his finger and pointed, and golden light emerged, and finally turned into a stream of light as thick as a candle flame, flying and fierce. The golden light suddenly exploded in mid-air, turning into dozens of golden needles, and finally pierced the reef, leaving fine holes. This move is really hard to defend against. If the enemy is careless, he will have died at this time. Finally, I have succeeded in it. It's worth all the ore I consumed. Li Quanqing exhaled a breath of turbid air, feeling quite satisfied. If we talk about the entry-level spells, it means that the newly graduated college students have only knowledge, but no practical experience. The minor level is already a veteran who has been struggling in society for several years and can stand on their own. As for the major level spells, they can be called industry masters. Any problem can be solved at a glance. It can be said that it is the ceiling for ordinary people to struggle for decades. Li Quanqing searched carefully and finally found 2 iron-bone crabs that had entered the mature stage. Harvest an iron-bone crab in the early stage of ki refining, and reward 5 medium-quality golden light shield talismans. 5 golden talismans appeared in Li Quanqing's hand, emitting a tiny light, which looked very extraordinary. This talisman is an advanced version of the lower-grade golden bell talisman. It can transform into a thick golden light shield to protect the vital parts of the whole body. Even if facing the attack of a cultivator at the 6th level of ki refining, it can withstand it for a cup of tea. Harvest a ki refining initial iron-bone crab and reward the top grade spell Gengjin Sword Art. It's actually a sword art. Li Quanqing was delighted. The content of the sword art is vast. In addition to killing techniques, it also includes many tips for flying the sword. Clang! Exclamation mark. He tried to use these tips to control the kingly sword to fly in the fish pond. The flying sword came and went as fast as a meteor. It was indeed more agile and swift than the previous sword flying, and it was at ease. Clang! The sword rang, and the magic power was infused. Suddenly, a golden sword energy about an inch long was cut out from both sides of the sword blade. The Gengjin Sword energy split the water and cut the waves. The momentum did not decrease. It chopped a large reef protruding from the water into pieces. Crack, crack. More than 20 iron bone crabs saw their houses being demolished. Their eyes rolled in unison, staring at the young man angrily and waving their claws. Iron bone crabs, I will sue the East China Sea. I will sue the East China Sea. Without 10 pieces of iron ore, this matter will not be over. Li Quanqing saw this. His face suddenly darkened. You want to sue the East China Sea and want to join the demon clan and become a wild demon? A group of uncooked crabs. He manipulated the formation to confine these big crabs and then took out the stone spirit seal to repair the reef. The yellow glow fell, the mud and rocks transformed, and the big reef slowly returned to its original shape. Flutter. When everything was over, a paper crane made of yellow paper flew from the sky, constantly hitting the formation, looking very rigid. Low-grade talisman. Sound transmission note. Li Quanqing curiously let the paper crane in and applied magic power to it. Suddenly, the crane's mouth opened and closed, and a gentle voice came out. Junior brother, the whereabouts of the bright moon shell seed has been found. A member of the Z family is willing to trade with us in Beijing Fang Market. What do you think? This voice repeated 3 times, and then the sound transmission note ignited without wind and turned into a wisp of green smoke and dissipated. Bright moon shell. Li Quanqing touched his chin. He had been too busy recently. He didn't expect Li Quanqiu to still remember this matter. He turned his eyes and looked at the group of green jade carps that were leisurely patrolling the territory under the water. These spiritual fish can worship the moon to practice, and the bright moon shell is also good at attracting the moonlight, complementing each other. But trading in Beijing Fang Market, this means leaving the family and going on a long journey. Li Quanqing searched his memory. In the past 17 years, the original body only went to Beijing Fang once with his parents when he was a child. The family has a special fleet every day to transport goods between the Green Jade Islands and Beijing Fang. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Li Quanqing began to count the trump cards he had accumulated. The Gengjin Sword Art that he had just learned, the Gengjin Finger of minor success, and the water control technique at the level of perfection. 2 mid-grade magic weapons, Kingly Sword and Stone Spirit Seal. The flying sword can be used to cut people, the spirit seal can be used to smash people, and it can also be used to cast earth wall stone spikes, which can be used for attack and defense. In addition, there are 815 low-grade water arrow talismans, 60 falling stone talismans, 5 mid-grade golden light shield talismans, and a number of other miscellaneous talismans. Even the late stage of key refining cannot stop him. It's a pity that there is still a magic weapon missing for escape. Li Quanqing thought to himself, and finally had some confidence to go out. Chapter 21 Spirit Boat. Qingdu Island, one of the 7 branch islands of the Li family, is the island with the largest number of mortals. The waters of this island are wide and there are very few reefs. It is a natural deep water ferry. Every morning, a large ship loaded with cargo will set off from here and go directly to Beijing Fang City. It is quite lively with people coming and going. On this day, it was just dawn. Li Quanqing had already got up and paddled the fishing boat to the agreed location. The morning sea breeze was wet, cold, salty and fishy, and the thick fog was surging like a fog monster with its mouth wide open, blowing straight into the port. Before the sun rose, the dock was already very busy. Many mortals were carrying goods up and down, perhaps staying up all night. Li Quanqing looked at these ordinary people who were as busy as ants. They seemed inconspicuous, but it was they who supported the prosperity of the world of cultivation. Junior brother, you came quite early. The blue waves were rippling, and Li Quanqiu arrived in a white jade boat, wearing a lake blue fairy dress, bright and atmospheric. Senior sister is so generous that she actually owns a spiritual boat. Li Quanqing looked at the white jade boat under the girl and was slightly amazed. This spiritual boat is 2 or 3 feet long. I don't know what material it is made of. The dense spiritual patterns and prohibitions cover every inch of the hull. The pressure slide is dazzling, and it looks like a magical weapon of the immortals. Compared with this boat, Li Quanqing's broken fishing boat is no different from garbage. It's just a low-grade spiritual boat. It was bought second-hand. Senior sister was heartbroken when she paid for the spiritual stones. Li Quanqing stroked her black hair blown by the sea breeze and said half truthfully, with a slender figure and a sweet smile, as a medium to large-sized magic weapon, a spiritual boat is also a must-have for sea monks, and its price has always been very high. Just talking about this spiritual boat, the price can be more than 100 spiritual stones. Woo. A low horn sounded, dull and powerful, echoing on the wide sea for a long time. This is a signal that the family cargo ship is about to set sail. The sound of the horn awakened the sleeping red sun, dispelled the thick fog, and revealed the huge monster that was originally hidden in it. It was also a spiritual boat, but it was bigger than a mountain. The towering hull was like a wall in front of us. The infinite forbidden aura flashed, and the breath it exuded was terrible and amazing, which made people feel suffocated, as if they were facing a great cultivator of foundation building. A second-level large spiritual boat. This was the first time Li Quanqing had seen such a huge monster, and he couldn't help but be shocked. The formation on the hull was humming, and I'm afraid that any casual attack would be enough to rival the great perfection of key refining. The mortals shouted and retreated to the dock, walking in groups of 3 or 2, ready to go home and sleep after drinking morning wine. Their mission was completed, but the journey of the cultivators had just begun. Hundreds of key refining cultivators drove boats and consciously gathered around the large spiritual boat, like a school of fish guarding a giant whale. Among them were members of the Li family and affiliated small families, all of whom were ready to take this ride. Junior brother, get on board. Li Quanqing patted his spiritual boat, which had plenty of space. Li Quanqing was not hypocritical and entrusted the fishing boat to the dock at the pier and stepped onto the white jade boat consciously. His feet were as steady as if he was stepping on land. Woohoo. The large spiritual boat sounded the horn again, and the green jade Li family's fish and dragon flags were raised everywhere on the hull, and it slowly set sail. The white jade spiritual boat was mixed in the fleet. A circle of spiritual light enveloped the hull, riding the wind and waves, and even the sea breeze blowing in became gentle, making others envious. Junior brother doesn't have a spiritual boat. When you go to Gengjin alone in the future, you can take this second level spiritual boat, but the ticket is a little expensive. Li Quanqing spoke, understanding, not wanting the atmosphere in the boat to be too awkward. Li Quanqing heard this, but smiled and said nothing. With his stable personality, how could he have the interest to run outside every day and stay in the fish pond to have endless opportunities? The mountain-like spiritual boat slowly accelerated, crashing into the sea surface and leaving behind a series of white waves like mountains. Gengjin is more than 3,800 miles away from the Qinghai Islands, and it can be reached in 4 hours. Li Quanqing's magic power alone is not enough to support the high-speed travel of the spiritual boat. She had expected this, and took out a few spiritual stones, ready to press them into the groove in the middle of the boat. Let me try. Li Quanqing performed the water control technique to manipulate the seawater on both sides of the hull. The seawater in front of the spiritual boat automatically parted, and huge waves formed at the stern, like a big hand pushing them forward quickly. It was obviously just a basic spell, but in his hands it exerted a completely opposite and amazing power. What a brilliant way of performing it. He actually cultivated the water control technique to such a level. Li Quanqing's eyes were full of light. In her opinion, this cousin was simply an omnipotent genius. The 4th level of key refining. The girl felt the aura of the boy's cultivation that was fully displayed and sighed in her heart. She spent more than a year at this bottleneck and only broke through half a month ago. Is the gap in spiritual roots really insurmountable? The two of them took turns to operate the spiritual boat. Whenever the mana consumed more than 30%, the other person would take over. Although there was a family fleet guarding, Li Quanqing still habitually took a steady hand. Halfway through the journey, they actually encountered a second large spiritual boat coming from the direction of Beoqing City, which showed that the Li family was wealthy. Facts have proved that Li Quanqing was indeed a little overwhelmed. Thousands of miles of sea passed by in a flash, and no accidents happened. Various islands were dotted along the way, some boats left on their own, and some new practitioners joined in. There were no blind robbers or monsters that coveted human flesh. In this thousands of miles of sea, the Qingyu Li family is the undisputed overlord. No matter what kind of ghosts and monsters you are, they will all turn into ashes when the mountain spiritual boat hits them. Finally, a huge island with lush vegetation appeared at the end of the sight. This green can be seen from a long distance. Beoqing City, here we are. There are still more than 100 miles away from the market. Li Quanqing's magic power pulled the spiritual boat and turned a corner and deviated from the course. Li Quanqing had expected it. The Z family member was not in the market, but lived on a nearby spiritual island. There are many islands around Beoqing, which is the favorite cave of many cultivators, and provides long-term rental services. This is also Li Quanqing's biggest dream, to buy a spiritual island of his own and live freely. My sister is a real direct descendant of the Z family. She has a high status. Junior brother, please don't lose your manners later. Li Quanqing tidied up her appearance and reminded again. Don't worry, senior sister, I know what I'm doing. Li Quanqing looked up and saw a bright red in the blue ocean. It was an island full of maple trees, square and shaped like a boat, called Red Maple Island. It is late autumn now, when the maple leaves are at their reddest, burning like flames, and it is so beautiful to see them up close. My distinguished guests are here, and my master is already waiting. Li Quanqing entered the island protection formation with the token, and two girls came up to greet him. They were as pretty as jade and lovely. What a great place. Li Quanqing walked on the jade paved path, which was full of spiritual energy and intoxicating scenery. It must have a top-grade spiritual vein hidden there. The rumbling sound of water came into his ears, and after turning a corner, the view suddenly opened up. The waterfall fell like a jade belt, rolling into the pool. The pavilions and towers on the shore were leaning against the water, quiet and pleasant. The girl in a red robe sat in the pavilion, looking at them, and she was so beautiful when she smiled. My Taoist friends have come from afar. Please drink this cup to wash away the dust on your body. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 Ruby. The girl sat in the ancient pavilion, with delicate features and a red dress that was picturesque. Even the wide sleeves could not hide her graceful figure. It's been a while since I last saw you. Sister Hanguyu's face has become more and more earthly, as ethereal as a fairy. Li Quanqing was very generous, and I didn't expect that compliments could be so nice. Li Quanqing also called her sister Hanguyu. He was too young, just a young boy. Hanguyu stood up to greet them, invited the two into the pavilion, and said a few polite words. Please, fellow Taoists. She raised the teacup in front of her. The liquid was bright red and the color was very light. It didn't look special. Li Quanqing didn't think much about it. He picked it up and took a big sip. The liquid went into his throat, just like a line of fire drilling into his stomach, burning hot, choking him and coughing repeatedly. This is not tea. He hadn't touched strong liquor for a long time, and he didn't like to drink it before he crossed over. For a while, his face turned red because of the spiciness. Didn't Sister Quanqing tell you that I never drink tea? I only drink wine. Hanguyu's eyes showed apology. Those old antiques in the clan always say that tea can enlighten the Tao, but I can only taste the bitterness. I prefer the spicy wine, and have been drinking it since I was a child. Li Quanqing didn't expect that the young man didn't drink a drop of wine. Just now I was in a hurry, but I forgot to mention this to my junior brother. The girl in the red skirt called the maid. Go get a pot of mountain spring water, dissolve milk and honey, and bring it over. It's okay, I'll just drink this. Li Quanqing heard this, but waved his hand hurriedly. What milk and honey? It sounds like coaxing a child. He picked up the wine glass and took a sip, trying to adapt to the spiciness. His tongue was numb. Seeing this, Zihangaiu was very careful and whispered to the maid. Not long after, several plates of cakes were brought up, with a fragrant smell, and a bowl of golden red sugar cubes. This is a specialty of Red Maple Island, called soft jade maple syrup, which tastes sweet and mellow, and has an endless aftertaste. Brother King can have a taste. Li Quanqing tried a piece, and it tasted really good, with a hint of sweetness blooming on the tip of the tongue, and the taste was dense and sweet. He dissolved the maple syrup in the wine, and it tasted unexpectedly good. The color was like amber, and it was that kind of sweet and spicy taste. After swallowing it into the stomach, the whole body felt warm. I couldn't help but drink another glass. The spirit wine helped the fun, and after a conversation, Zihangaiu took them to visit the scenery of various places on the island. The elegant bamboo raft was deliberately dyed red, and the gauze was graceful, carrying the 3 people floating in the pool. Please look, the moon shells are raised here, all of which are fine varieties brought from Baosu Island. Li Quanqing looked down. This lake in the middle of the lake is not very deep, and the water is clear and clean, and you can directly see the scene at the bottom of the pool. There are strange rocks standing in a forest, as if a stalagmite is rooted in the water, with a rugged shape. Each of the clams lay on the stone, as bright as the moon, pure white, and with a faint bloom of colorful hairs between the opening and closing of the shells. This water is so clean, even algae are rare. Li Quanqing raises fish all day long, so he naturally understands the strangeness of it. He scooped up a handful of water, which was freezing cold, as if he was touching flowing ice. It's the credit of the moon shells. They swallow and spit day and night, purifying impurities, and then receiving the moonlight of the moon to cleanse the water. This is just an instinct for the clams. Li Quanqing nodded. It can be said that the moon shells are the cleaners bred by nature. These shells are all good. I wonder how to trade them? Li Quanqing looked at the girl, who had just touched them with his hand. The moon shells were only as big as lychees, and they were just bred, and the maturity was less than 10%. It's just like what Sister Quanshu said, we only need the shellfish, not the adult shellfish. Zihangaiu looked at him strangely. You know, it takes nearly a year for these shellfish to break through the key refining stage and grow up to maturity. And then it takes several more years of blood and flesh grinding to breed a gem. Li Quanqing smiled slightly. I have my own ideas. Sister Hangaiu, please don't persuade me. It's up to you. The girl propped up her cheeks with the back of her hand and thought for a moment. I'll count it as one of your spirit stones in exchange for a shellfish. This price can be called cheap, and the most important thing is that it is not circulated on the market at all. Only the Z family sells it in the nearby sea area. Li Quanqing took out the spirit stone and bought 30 directly, which was much smoother than expected. I heard from my sister that my younger brother King is also a genius in refining weapons. Zihangaiu tilted her head, her black hair like a waterfall, and there was a kind of cat-like cunning between her eyebrows. When the time comes, my sister will ask you to help refine the treasure spirit beads. You are not allowed to refuse. Li Quanqing was stunned for a moment, nodded and agreed. If you have any request, I will do my best. After everything was done, it was already dusk. After staying for dinner, the two said goodbye and left. How it's finally over. Li Quanqing stood at the bow. The sea breeze was gentle, the night was deep, and he felt a sense of relief. Staying in the fish pond all day, accompanied by a group of monsters, he felt that he was not used to this kind of social interaction with his peers. Here, this is your reward, senior sister. Li Quanqing shed his pretense of maturity, restored his youthful nature, and smiled and handed over a jade slip. The jade slip recorded many experiences in refining weapons, which were quite detailed. Junior brother, you're really good. Hangaiu just told me secretly that you look very handsome when you're serious. Li Quanqing took the jade slip and blinked. The setting sun sank into her pupils, as if she had taken in an entire autumn. Have you ever thought about chasing after this little rich woman? Senior sister, what are you talking about? How old am I? The great way comes first. Li Quanqing was somewhat speechless. It was enough for him to touch fish and play with crabs when he had nothing to do. He had never thought about these things. A wooden stake. He doesn't understand romance. Li Quanqing said in his heart, really worried about his family brother's future Taoist partner. The spirit boat broke through the water and headed straight for Gengjin City. It was getting late, and it was too unsafe to travel alone. It was better to wait until tomorrow morning and return with the family fleet. After sailing for more than 10 miles, a boat came towards them. On it sat a lone middle-aged cultivator with a faint look. Both sides were very alert until they crossed each other. Li Quanqing, who was tense, breathed a sigh of relief. 5th level of key refining. Li Quanqing looked back and watched the other person go away. The spirit boat continued to fly away for dozens of miles. Gengjin City was already in sight. The lights were bright and it was bustling all night. May the true immortal bless you and have a safe journey. Li Quanqing completely relaxed. When we get to the island, senior sister will take you to taste it. Bang! Exclamation mark. Boom boom. Before the girl finished her words, a loud noise suddenly exploded underwater, making people's ears buzz, rumbling like thunder. The calm sea surface exploded in an instant. White waves surged, and the spirit boat was directly lifted into the air. A series of pitch black yin thunder shot out from the seawater, crackling and striking at the white jade boat. Robbery. Li Quanqing reacted very quickly. His body was shaking unsteadily in the boat, and he hurriedly manipulated the formation on the spirit boat to defend himself. Li Quanqing also held several golden light shield talismans, ready to activate at any time. Fortunately, the surface of the spiritual boat glowed, and the infinite restrictions were activated, successfully erasing these thunders. Crash. Li Quanqing used the water control technique, and the surging seawater turned into a big hand, holding up the boat and landing safely on the sea. Fortunately, it did not capsize. Bang, bang. The turbid waves rose and fell, and two cultivators emerged from the water, wrapped in black fish skin tights, revealing only 2 malicious eyes. How dare you attack my Qingyu Li clan members? The Gengjin law enforcement team is nearby, and will be here in a moment. Li Quanqing stood at the bow and scolded, taking out the magic weapon and talisman, but he felt confident in his heart. 2 robbery cultivators at the 4th level of key refining are enough to deal with. Haha, I'm going to kill you Li family members. A cold laugh came from the back, and the 3rd robbery cultivator came through the waves on a tortoise shell magic weapon, without hiding his own tyrannical magic power. 5th level of key refining. Chapter 23 Sword Cultivator Quanqing. The 3 tribulation cultivators formed a pincer attack, surrounding the spirit boat, and their auras were faintly connected. Li Quanqing looked at the last tribulation cultivator of the 5th level of key refining, and had a guess in his mind. Is that the person who just passed by you? The man was wrapped in a black robe, and it was impossible to tell whether he was tall, short, fat, or thin. He ordered coldly, kill them. Boom. Upon hearing this, the other 2 raised their hands and shot out walnut-sized thunderballs, which turned into lightning that swam all over the sky. This was the yin thunder refined from the yin turbid air. It was extremely poisonous and could pollute the magic tools and bones of the cultivators. The electric snakes swam, the thunder roared, and the forbidden spiritual patterns were constantly erased. The white jade spirit boat was in a precarious situation for a while. Junior brother, we will control the spirit boat to break through later. It's best to catch them by surprise and kill a thief instantly. This place is only 40 or 50 miles away from the market. With such a big commotion, the family law enforcement team will soon arrive. Li Quanqing calmly looked at the battlefield, looking for opportunities, and responded calmly. But if you look closely, you can see a trace of panic hidden in her eyes. Li Quanqing was very calm. Seeing that no new enemies jumped out, he instantly activated the talisman in his hand. Buzz! Exclamation mark. The dazzling golden light bloomed and turned into a thick light shield the size of a house, wrapping up the entire spiritual boat. Crackling. All the black yin thunder swarmed in and exploded, but were drowned by the golden light. What a powerful talisman. Li Quanqing's eyes suddenly lit up, and the confidence of breaking through increased greatly. The 2 robbery cultivators were also a little dumbfounded, and all looked at their boss. Those yin thunders were already the most powerful means of the 2. The black-robed monk said nothing, and suddenly made a move, and dozens of streams of light flew out from all parts of his body. They were long white bone needles made of polished bones. The needle tip was scarlet and smelled sweet and fishy. It was obviously quenched with poison. This set of white bone netherworld needles was extremely toxic, corroding iron and corroding gold. It was enough to drill through a small mountain. I don't know how many monks and monsters it had killed, but the long needles pierced the cover, but were blocked by the golden light, and could not go in. Especially the front end of the dark red poison needles, when rubbing against the golden light, all made a hissing corrosion sound. The black-clothed robber cultivator's heart sank, and he took out his most powerful magic weapon, blood shark knife, swung his arm, and cut out a blood-colored knife light. Clang! Exclamation mark. The knife light swallowed and spewed out the sharp edge, breaking through the air, and chopped on the surface of the golden light cover like forging iron, sparks flying. When the magic power dissipated, the golden light surged, and it was still solid. It's a bit painful. Retreat. The man's pupils shrank slightly, and his character was quite decisive. He called his companions to dive into the sea and run away. They didn't have enough time. Once they grinded the golden tortoise shell a little bit, the law enforcement team would arrive. Want to escape? Look at my magic weapon, flying sword. Sword. Li Quanqing shouted, cutting the grass and eradicating the roots with murderous intent, and his palm reached for the storage bag. Oh no, this person turned out to be an unparalleled sword cultivator. The three of them were so angry that their hair stood on end. They used their strongest defenses. How could they dare to relax and run away? No matter how fast a person's escape method is, how can it be faster than the speed of a flying sword? The next second, dense water arrows fell from the sky, and the water waves surged, like rain hitting banana leaves. Li Quanqing used up dozens of water arrow talismans in one breath, which was really amazing. The water arrows were thick, and flew from all directions, with great force and heavy power. The three robbery cultivators were hit so hard that they vomited blood, and they were even more depressed. What kind of flying sword is this? Sword. Another skyful of water arrows fell from the sky, with rolling magic power, stirring up spiritual energy, and there was no way to retreat in heaven and on earth. This group of robbery cultivators cursed, and dared not stand still and resist, and forced their way out. If this continues, hundreds of spiritual talismans will fall down, and even a cultivator in the late stage of key refining will not be able to stop it. Boom. 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 But how can Li Quanqing's mind be so easy to guess? Under the cover of water arrows, he used up several more rock-falling talismans, and the rolling rocks fell like meteorites from outer space, tearing the seawater, smashing on their heads. The two key refining level 4 cultivators screamed. Their heads were broken and bleeding, their brains bursting out on the spot, and there was no sound. Clang. The last GXIU was experienced, and he drew out the blood shark knife with his backhand, wielding the knife light to split the falling rock in half. What a cunning boy, with a vicious mind, comparable to a wolf and fox. He did not dare to delay at all, turned around and ran. His whole body was soaked by the seawater, and his heart was even colder. Sword. At this time, the last loud shout came from behind, and there was a faint clear sword sound resounding through the sky. This time it should be true, right? The GXIU thought. While fleeing, he looked back with the corner of his eye. I saw a powerful mana fluctuation blooming, and a yellowish brown light penetrated the sky, and it came in the blink of an eye, going straight to the vital point. It's a magic weapon. The black-robed monk almost had the urge to burst into tears. He mobilized the mana in his body, and swung the blood knife to accurately chop it. With a thud, the blood-colored knife light shattered and revealed the stone spirit seal hidden inside. What a heavy magic weapon. The robbery cultivator's body sank after being hit by the small seal, but he finally blocked it. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and his heart was filled with joy. Just when he relaxed, the kingly sword suddenly emerged from the seawater, like a long lurking green-scaled poisonous python. The sword light was swallowing and spitting, and it went straight to Huanglang. But in the next second, a tortoise-shell magic weapon flew out of the black-robed monk's arms, rippling the water, turning into a shield, and entangled with the kingly sword. Successfully blocked this fatal blow. Ha ha ha, little fox, you are still too naive after all. The black-clothed robbery cultivator couldn't help but laugh out loud, raising his eyebrows and breathing proudly, sweeping away all the depression in his heart. After so many losses, he finally won once. The magic weapon was blocked, and it was indeed a failure. Li Quanqing shrugged helplessly. You are lucky. I will spare your life. Go away. Gxiu snorted coldly, but he couldn't suppress his perky mouth under the mask. He turned his head to look at the boundless sea, and a hope of life enveloped him again. Great joy, great freedom. The monk retreated cautiously, but he didn't expect that a small wave under his feet suddenly exploded. Puff! Exclamation mark. A ray of golden light drilled out from it, piercing through the void as fast as a meteor. The golden light quickly enlarged in the pupil, and there was no time to dodge. The golden light instantly penetrated the top of the head, and the brain was opened. Gengjin finger. Under the effect of inertia, the black-robed Gxiu's head tilted back. The blue sea is boundless. The water and the sky are the same color. The pupils are slowly stained with blood. The world is red, and there is no difference between them. The unwilling eyes finally lost the last bit of color. Finally, they are all dead. I will never go out again. The world of immortal cultivation outside is too dangerous. On the spiritual boat, Li Quanqing was so tired that he sat down on the ground. Only 40% of his mana was left. He grabbed a spiritual stone to recover quickly, but he did not lose his vigilance. Beside him, Li Quanqiu's red lips were slightly open. Her pretty face was dull, and she was still a little unresponsive. She was just about to break through desperately, but she witnessed her family brother's dazzling operation, and 3 swords solved all the enemies. Now my head is still buzzing. Sister, what are you thinking about? Relying on his strong physique, Li Quanqing was still full of energy, and waved in front of the girl. The soul is back. Li Quanqiu blinked, admiring her sincerely, and exclaimed, Junior brother, your swordsmanship is so strong. You will definitely be the peerless swordsman of our Li family in the future. Really? I think so too. One sword is free and unstoppable, invincible in the East China Sea. Li Quanqing touched his head, grinning. His eyes narrowed with joy. Let's go. Take senior sister to touch the corpse, and follow me to enjoy the good life in the future. Chapter 24 Return. The sea water was cold and rustling. 3 bodies rose and fell in the water, with large areas of blood staining them. The white jade boat was wrapped in a golden light shield and approached carefully. Li Quanqing was cautious, and did not disperse the defensive talisman in his hand. He manipulated the kingly sword, and cut off the heads and limbs of the 3 robbery cultivators one after another, piercing their hearts, and they were deader than dead. These guys are quite rich. The flying swords were flying all over the place, picking up their storage bags, and salvaging several magic weapons. The middle grade magic weapon Black Turtle Shield, Blood Shark Knife, the low grade magic weapon White Bone Netherworld Needle, and even a low grade spiritual boat. More than 120 spiritual stones, a number of elixir spiritual materials, and 5 storage bags. Li Quanqiu frowned and said, something is wrong. How can a casual cultivator be so rich? A cultivator in the late stage of key refining is just like this. Li Quanqing pinched his chin and said, Senior sister, do you mean that there is an organization behind them? These guys seem to be coming for the Li family, and it was indeed possible. Li Quanqiu was not afraid of getting dirty. He picked up the clothes of several corpses and suddenly made a new discovery. This group of robbery cultivators had more or less signs of monsters, with gills on their chests and scales on their skin. No wonder they lurk underwater, silently. They are human monsters. The two suddenly realized. Thousands of years ago, a large number of land cultivators responded to the call of the Xiuxin world and came to the East China Sea to open up wasteland and fight a life and death battle with the monsters. Among them, there were naturally traitors of the human race, who either combined with monsters or were transformed by monster blood, giving birth to many strange-looking human monsters. They have great malice towards the human race. The human monsters sneaked into our Li family's sea area and made waves. Is there going to be a beast tide? Li Quanqiu frowned, and a worry rose in his heart. The Qinghai Islands are quite close to the border of the human race. Going east for tens of thousands of miles is the territory of the monsters. For the Xiuxin world, 1,000 years is too short. The human race has not even occupied 1/10 of the East China Sea. Li Quanqing didn't know much about these things, but he looked indifferent and happily divided the spoils. Li Quanqiu knew that he didn't contribute much, so he couldn't refuse, so he just took 10 spirit stones symbolically. Are you two from the Qingyu family? It was not until then that the patrol law enforcement team of Beijing City finally arrived. Li Quanqing and the others showed their identity tokens from the refining hall and were immediately warmly welcomed. Another robbery attack? The captain of the law enforcement team was a mighty man holding a long spear with a 6th level key refining cultivation level. He frowned and muttered to himself when he heard this. Li Quanqing was careful and heard the hidden meaning. Are there other tribesmen attacked? The man nodded. In the past month, there have been frequent robberies around the market. A total of 5 tribesmen have been killed. They all went to remote sea areas to explore or hunt monsters. He looked through the 3 bodies and suddenly realized, this is the first time we have discovered the true face of the murderer. It turned out that it was a monster. Li Quanqing couldn't help patting his chest when he heard it. It was too dangerous outside. It's better to go back to the fish pond as soon as possible. You two have made great contributions to the family. When we report to the second elder, there will be rewards. The law enforcement captain smiled. The person in charge of Beijing Market is the second elder of the family. The next morning, Li Quanqing opened the window and looked out. The sun had just risen, and the streets of the market were already bustling. Beijing covers a large area, stretching for dozens of miles. The island is lush with vegetation and shops are lined up. It is said that there are about 6,000 key refining cultivators living here, and there are even more mortals. Outside the island protection formation, cultivators of all kinds gathered from all over the sea. Some were driving spirit boats, riding the wind and waves. Some were riding various spirit pets, swaggering, and there were even cultivators who descended from the sky with the help of magic tools, with an unfathomable aura. The crowds were bustling, but they all obeyed the rules. Under the supervision of the law enforcement team, they lined up and walked into the market town. With the suppression of the 2 major foundation building families and the protection of the second level formation, no one dared to make trouble. Is this the family's heritage? Li Quanqing looked at the family decorations on the armor of the law enforcement team, and a sense of pride rose in his heart. Just by wearing the green fish dragon clothes on his body, walking in the market town, he would be the most handsome guy on the street. Dang dang. There was a knock on the door, and the girl's voice came in. Junior brother, are you up yet? As soon as the door was opened, Li Quanqing threw a bag over. Here, your blood shark knife and those sundries sold for a total of 108 spirit stones. Senior sister is very efficient. The boy took it happily. Li Quanqing's father runs a store for the family in the market, and he has quite a few connections. Li Quanqing checked the storage bag. After last night's battle, his spirit stone reserves officially exceeded 300. It was indeed the gold belt for murder and arson. Want to take a walk in the market? It's very lively. The girl played with her hair. She grew up here and was very familiar with it. Li Quanqing refused. The shell seeds were still on him and needed to be put back into the fish pond as soon as possible. Moreover, the family fleet returning to Qingyu Island only had 1 trip in the morning, and time was very tight. They walked out of the attic cave belonging to the family, and the law enforcement captain they met last night saw them off all the way. The second elder learned of their merits and rewarded each of them with 200 family contribution points. As collateral clansmen, they could not see this powerful elder who held great power. At the dock of Fangxi, hundreds of spirit boats were docked, as well as various pleasure boats and pavilions, shining brightly and quite spectacular. 2 large spirit boats were docked in the deep water, as tall as mountains. One belonged to the Qingyu family, and the other belonged to the Z family of Beosu Island. Let's go. Li Quanqing took out the spoils of last night, and now he had his own spirit boat. The slow-grade spirit boat was sea blue crystal clear, as if it was integrated with the sea. The young man liked it very much. Woo. The large spirit boat issued a familiar horn sound and slowly set off, with thousands of sails following, and the momentum was vast. Li Quanqing had money in his pocket at this time, so he no longer saved. He took out the spirit stone and pressed it in the groove, and he was leisurely enjoying the spectacular scenery along the way. Smoothly and safely, the two returned to Qingyu Island. Li Quanqing found the fishing boat docked at the ferry and went straight to his own fish pond. Although he had only been out for less than 2 days, he was eager to go home. Fish cubs, did you miss me? Li Quanqing opened the formation and smiled. What greeted him was a dense mass of water arrows that almost filled the entire sky, with a sound of pop, pop, snap, snap. In a corner of the fish pond, more than 20 iron bone crabs were trapped in the formation, waving their large claws in dissatisfaction. Before Li Quanqing left, he forgot to cancel their confinement. It's just that I haven't been fed for 2 days and I'm hungry. Is it necessary to welcome me so warmly? The boy wiped the water stains on his face, fed the fish, and took out the shellfish to check one by one. Full of disgust, bright moon shell. The water is so dirty. I swallow, purify it. See. Maturity. 9%. Despair. Bright moon shell. I can't finish it. This work can't be finished at all. I have to work overtime every day. I'll just drown myself with seawater. Maturity. 8%. Is this water very dirty? Li Quanqing scooped up a handful of water, which was dark blue and green, and you could see some residual bait and suspicious particles. It seems that it is indeed not very clean. He looked embarrassed. There was nothing he could do. The fish pond was so small and there were too many things to raise. The growth environment of the moonlight clam requires that the water should not be too deep and the moon should be visible every night. Li Quanqing took out the stone spirit seal to raise the terrain, piled up the soil, and formed pillars that were thick at the bottom and thin at the top in the fish pond. It looked like 30 stone lotus flowers were blooming, holding up the quiet moonlight clams, and swallowing and purifying the seawater. Snap. A newly mature iron bone crab climbed along the reef to the top of the stone pillar, poking the shell curiously, with a ball of light swaying above its head. Li Quanqing's big hand fell, and grabbed the crab. Here you go. Harvest an iron bone crab in the early stage of key refining, and reward a bottle of iron bone pills. Right square bracket. Chapter 25 Iron Bones. Iron Bone Pill, a spiritual pill for body refining. Long-term use can temper the bones of the whole body, making them as hard as iron and extremely powerful. The light spots in the sky dispersed and turned into a palm-sized white jade bottle, which contained 12 pills. Li Quanqing poured out an iron bone pill, which was snow white and round, with a few bloodlines on the surface and a medicinal aroma. It tastes sweet, like eating chocolate. He threw it into his mouth and chewed it. The taste was a bit hard and crisp. After swallowing it into his stomach, a tingling heat flow penetrated into his bone marrow, giving him a refreshing feeling, like soaking in a hot spring. My skin is as hard as rock. If I add the power of iron bone, I should be no worse than a physical cultivator in the early stage of key refining. Li Quanqing pinched the big crab. The sharp crab claws posed no threat to him at all. With such a strong physique, maybe he can practice a physical refining method? Li Quanqing manipulated the formation to gather the iron bone crabs and check them one by one. Sure enough, he found several mature light balls as rewards. Harvest 1 key refining early iron bone crab, and reward 1 Gengjin finger experience. Right square bracket asterisk 2. Harvest 1 key refining early iron bone crab, and reward 5 mid-grade golden light talismans. No Gengjin Sword Art experience reward. Li Quanqing opened his 5 fingers, each of which emitted a golden light, like a very spiritual little snake, showing its sharp edge. Unfortunately, he was still looking forward to the power of the sword art. After it was completed, night fell, and the bright moon rose with the tide. More than 2,000 big black fish floated to the surface of the water one after another, and they were all black. Their bamboo green backs were shining in the moonlight. Moo. Moo. 20 green jade carps stretched out their green silk-like cloud-like fins and swam slowly in the fish pond, calling in a deep and powerful voice. They are now nearly 2 feet long, with scales arranged tightly and orderly, smooth and delicate. When they swim in the water, they are like a flowing piece of ancient green jade. Especially the largest one. The green fish body was covered with golden lines. The sapphire luster was blooming, mysterious and noble. In the eyes of a pair of dead fish, there was a blazing flame of obsession to turn into a dragon, and the momentum was high. Moo. The spiritual fish opened their mouths wide towards the moon, swallowing and spitting continuously, as if they were holding a mysterious sacrificial ceremony, and wisps of the moonlight of the moon fell. Li Quanqing admired the perseverance of the fish school. They would do this every night, day after day, year after year, and practice hard without stopping. Dada. The iron bone crabs knocked against the reef and couldn't wait to get into the water, wanting to continue to rub the spiritual energy. Unexpectedly, the fish school tonight was particularly irritable and surrounded the big crabs in unison. Bah, bah, bah. More than 1,000 water arrows bloomed together. The scene was particularly spectacular, like a huge water lotus in full bloom, disturbing the peace of the fish pond. More than 20 iron bone crabs were smashed directly into the bottom of the water. Their shells creaked, and they almost disintegrated to see their grandmother. Li Quanqing frowned and found that the big black fish were not in a good state. Not only did they spit at the crabs, but they even started fighting with each other, bumping into each other and fighting hard. For a time, the turbid waves rolled, the waves were turbulent, and the entire sea surface was muddy, and there was no longer the previous peace and tranquility. Crash. The tide surged, and beams of light fell from the sky, turning into ripples that slowly spread in the fish pond. It was the 30 bright moon shells. They once again ushered in the moonlight to come, cool and cold, slowly calming the restless fish. The silvery white moonlight bloomed, like smoke and fog, illuminating every area of the water, as if 30 headlights were installed under the water. Finally, the fish regained their calm, drifted with the waves, and slowly dived into the water. Could it be that they think the fish pond is too small and lacks spiritual energy? The tempers of these big black carps are too violent. Li Quanqing grabbed a few black carps and looked at them carefully, but did not find anything unusual. It can only be attributed to the fact that the living space is too narrow, which makes the spiritual fish wild. He couldn't help but think of Zihangai's private spiritual island, and he was extremely envious. When he becomes stronger in the future and has enough spiritual stones, he will definitely become the master of an island and directly contract 10,000 acres of sea area to make a fish pond. On the surface of the reef, the iron-boned crabs climbed up aggrievedly, and their big claws drooped weakly. They no longer have the arrogance of the iron bones before. Li Quanqing found it funny, and took out the nutritious iron ore to feed them, just to comfort these silly guys. I didn't expect that the bright moon shell looks small in size, but it can be so bright. Li Quanqing looked at the bright sea water and was amazed. The moonlight received by the spiritual shells is not much, but when they open their shells and refract the moonlight, it appears much brighter. The boy opened his eyes wide and could even see through the dense school of fish and see a dozen mounds of earth at the bottom of the water, standing there motionless. This group of stone spiritual loaches has long been mature. They have been kept and do not need to be fed, which saves worry and effort. In fact, Li Quanqing is willing to do an experiment. The strength of spiritual loaches is generally at the first level of key refining now. When they break through the second and third levels, or even the middle stage of key refining, I wonder if new light balls will be bred as rewards. This kind of development of the golden finger ability is still necessary. Li Quanqing took out the 2 magic tools he had harvested before, and prepared to refine them at this time and stamp his own magic power mark. The black tortoise shield looks like a large black tortoise shell, with strange blue patterns on the surface and spiritual power lines engraved. In addition to its own hard structure, it can also mobilize seawater to turn into a water wave cover, to block various magic attacks. This shield is only of average quality among the middle grade magic tools, but it is enough for the moment. The white bone netherworld needles, a total of 28 dark white long needles, flickering with dim light, contain deadly poison. Come and go without a trace. Li Quanqing likes this kind of needle-shaped magic tool the most. It is small and exquisite, very suitable for ambush people, and the movement of flying in the air is much smaller than that of a flying sword. Therefore, he can't let it go. Li Quanqing mobilized the magic power of Dunshan, and he had to wipe off the remaining marks left by the previous owner of the magic tool, before he could successfully put his own mark. The blue gold magic power bloomed in the palm of his hand and drilled into the deepest part of the magic tool. It encountered considerable resistance and moved as slowly as a snail. Sooner or later, I have to throw away this rubbish technique. Li Quanqing sighed and couldn't help thinking of the foundation building technique, blue sea tide rising technique, that he had been thinking about day and night. There is still a year and a half before the family competition, and his family contribution is now 640 points. With 2-pronged approach and double guarantee, this technique will be in his hands sooner or later. The Li family has dominated the Qinghai Islands for nearly 1,000 years, with a solid foundation. There is nothing major happening on weekdays. Li Quanqing once again lived a peaceful life of raising fish. The plain life is the real life. The big crabs have matured one after another, and a total of 7 bottles of iron bone pills, 20 golden light shield talismans, and 4 Gengjin finger experience groups have been harvested. Only the largest iron bone crab king is left, and it is still in the development stage. With the blessing of the experience group, the Gengjin finger has successfully entered the stage of great success, running smoothly and sending and receiving at will. By analogy, the Gengjin Sword Art has also reached the small success stage, and can be used to fight the enemy. With the help of the kingly sword, to activate the sword art, the Gengjin sword energy can be said to be Li Quanqing's most powerful means of attack at present. During this period of time, Li Quanqing also completed all the basic learning of refining, and successfully completed the final examination of the ground level school. The title of family refining master is already waving at him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.